Hey guys, welcome to part 12 of What If Naruto Was Adopted by Hyuga Clan. If you enjoy the video then like, share and subscribe and also comment your thoughts as it inspires me to make more such videos, and remember to check out my playlist section for other interesting stories. So let's get started. Chapter 62. New Year's Eve Omake. Omake. New Year's Eve. School was boring. Very boring. Although the academy where they were trained to become shinobi was less dull than the normal civilian school, it was still dull. 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 My god, it's dull. It's so desperately dull and tedious and stuffy and boring and day-per-8ly dull. But there were those rare few days when things were slightly better. Today was such a day. No lessons, but instead a celebration of the new year which was to come. Boring speeches aside, he was glad that Iruka wasn't there anymore. The event itself had been reasonably fun. Well, as much fun as Konohamaru could have, that is. The death of his grandfather still fresh in his memory, the young boy was still slightly depressed. After the party he, Udon, and Moegi were joined, another surprise, by his young rival. Hyuga Hanabi was, however, heading in the same direction as they were, considering most of the more important clans had flocked together in the same general district of the village. Just as the clanless had their own part in town, Moegi was, as always, trying to get a proper conversation rolling with the stoic Hyuga, while Udon did his utmost best at not having his usual drip of snot underneath his nose. It eluded Konohamaru as to why his friend always attempted to look less sickly and weak when the Hyuga girl was around. To Konohamaru, the girl was a rival. A rival at being the top of their class. But above all, a rival at capturing that hellish talking cat. The malicious feline called Chi. Just when the boy was thinking about the bane of all mammals, he saw the critter walking through the street. It's her. Unfortunately, he wasn't the only one who saw her. Those pesky Hyuga eyes. Hey, no fair, Konohamaru protested, when Hanabi shot away. At this rate, she'd be the one to capture the cat first. Because something was very wrong with the creature, considering how it was swaggering from one side of the street to the other, almost as if she was drunk. A bit like how Konohamaru had seen his uncle, after the man had gobbled up too much sake. Though this only happened when his aunt wasn't in the village, she seemed to have an aversion against drunken people. Eisken has no more cadsnibs, she slurred, clumsily evading the Hyuga girl. Konohamaru jumped in right after her, but somehow the cat was too slippery to catch. Leaves me all alone. Eyes z haddish. You're drunk. Konohamaru accusedly pointed his finger. Eyes no drunk. Eyes catsnips. She continued to prattle. You too loud. Zoo legs. You no help. I wants the lens. In some strange way the cat, intoxicated by an unknown quantity of catnip, managed to elude all four children, and made a run for it. Not wanting to lose to each other, the children all hurried after the long-tailed creature. Not too far away from them, a certain blonde Shunin was jumping across the rooftops. Akko was beginning to worry why Chi hadn't come home for dinner, and considering the creature's track record, Naruto wondered what kind of chaos he'd end up in this time. He had heard how badly Kakashi had gotten injured. Twice, at that. Tsunade had barely finished patching him up when she heard why Anko had put him in the hospital in the first place. And Tsunade did not take kindly to lingerie-thieving perverts. As a certain bruised Hokage could testify. Just why did that idiot dig his own grave by talking about his precious? Naruto grumbled to himself. Well, he was technically Naruto, even though he was but a clone. And the life of a clone sucked. He'd be kicking the bucket before he'd even have any fun. He blamed his creator for the living life to the fullest mentality. It wasn't like he, a mere clone, could be held responsible if he made a few detours, right? After a little detour which, coincidentally, passed by the Hyuga estate, the clone noticed four familiar children. Correction, he noticed four familiar children chasing a familiar fluffy tail. She, what has she been up to this time? The clone wasn't really prepared to intervene, though. Letting the kids continue their fruitless chase after the much faster Bakeneko offered quite an entertaining sight. Not that he would let Akko know that he sometimes aided the mischievous cat in her onslaught. They're heading toward the Uchiha district. Interesting. Naruto smirked. But why was Chi heading towards the district? Not even Naruto could tell. Though whatever the creature was planning, it couldn't be good. So, even though it was with some reluctance, the clone revealed himself and stopped the cat. Whiskers zoo leg. What are you planning this time? Boom. She chuckled. Boom. Boom. Naruto blinked, signaling the four approaching children to keep their distance. It was New Year's Eve, so the creature could have gotten her paws on some firework. Everything goes boom. You've gone mad. Naruto sighed. Are you drunk? Catsnips. Zoo leg. I has catsnips. The feline chuckled like a mad cat. Catnip or not, you're becoming a danger to the entire village at this rate. We're going back to the Uzumaki grounds, right now. No. The cat childishly refused. Yes. No. Somehow the cat had gotten a little firecracker in its paws, and Naruto began to wonder if he was drugged as well, but he really did see her do it. The cat lit the firecracker and threw it. Everything go boom. It is only one firecracker. Naruto face palmed. You Bakaneko. Don't call me a Bizakaneko, you insolent zoo leg. The clone didn't even respond, instead simply grabbed the cat by its tail. She was too high on catnip to fight back. One little seal later, and she was bound. You are a stupid cat. Bakaneko is the right word for an idiot like you. I don't like addicts. Hey, we were about to catch her, Konohamaru pouted. No fair. Yeah, I saw that. The clone looked at the kids with an expression that made them, Hanabi especially, furious. He treated them like children. Now go back to your homes, and stop loitering in areas you're not even supposed to enter in the first place, you. The little firecracker made a nice flight, short and surprisingly precise, through the broken window of the nearest shop. In her addled mind, she had mistaken the little thing for a heavy explosive, one which she could use to remove the property that belonged to the one who had hurt Naruto and the others. One thing anyone should know about the Uchiha clan, however, was that they were very self-reliant. Even before they faced the growing discrimination against them, the Uchiha had been one of the few who remained true to the old ways of when they were an individual clan. As such, the compound also included a wide variety of stores and workshops. Some of them were known to Konoha and some of the shops manufactured and or sold goods which were not known to the rest of the village. Acting as military police, the clan often confiscated goods which were deemed illegal. Most of the times these goods were destroyed, however, in some cases. The little firecracker thrown by the wayward and intoxicated cat was thrown into one such shop. The Uchiha who lived here was a fanatic when it came to explosive devices. Prior his untimely death during the massacre, the man traded many of these illegal weapons with his clan members. Acting as military police, the Uchiha needed all the advantages they could get while fighting other trained shinobi. One common disadvantage of traps was that they were traceable due to the chakra used to activate or charge them. The explosives created in this particular workshop, however, did not require chakra. Originally imported from a faraway nation, these weapons were perfect when facing the sensory type of opponent. The downside, however, was that after a certain amount of time would pass, the explosive material became rather unstable. Hidden beneath a shelf, the secret workshop had remained hidden when the Anbu examined the compound after the massacre. The shelf had, however, gone rotten after all this time, and had collapsed. The little firecracker thrown by Chi thus, unintentionally, fell into this basement filled to the brim with these unstable combustibles. It all led to a pounding explosion which sent Naruto and the children flying. More on instinct than due to conscious thought, Naruto created more clones, and ensured that the four children were safe. He looked at the Uchiha district in dismay. The rapidly spreading fire would consume far more than the four buildings which had been torn asunder due to the explosion. Crap, my history with Sasuke is well known, so if I am the one found next to this chaos everyone would put the blame on me. The clone's eyes widened. Anbu would already be on their way. Scram, he ordered the children. And keep your mouths shut until I found a way to explain this to the Hokage. The children didn't need to see him vanish with the cat to know that they too needed to haul ass. Now. Immediately. Not that Konohamaru, Moegi, and Udon got that far. Squads of Anbu already appeared, drawn to the explosion and subsequent bonfire. Hanabi only managed to elude them thanks to her Byakugan. And still it was a narrow escape. I suppose it is my victory today for not getting caught. Flying through the shadows, the young Hyuga ran as fast as she could. Still, it took several minutes before she reached the safety of her clan's compound. Although, safety. Hanabi-chan, he father stood in the door opening. I think you have some explaining to do. With her mother next to him. And both had their dojutsu activated. And Hanabi knew very well that their range was far enough to see where she had. Damn. She was so busted. With explosions going off in the distance, the entire group sat at the small cabin which stood on top of the large boulder at the center of the pond in front of the Uzumaki complex. Rado, Anko, Akko, Karen, and Naruto, all were enjoying the evening. Sure, it was a bit chilly, but it was nothing a little heater couldn't fix. They're a few hours early, Akko remarked. Odd. Must be some idiot who put his firework on by accident again, Anko chuckled. Poor sods. The Anbu might tolerate the festivities of New Year's Eve, but everyone knows they don't like it when people set off their fireworks too early. But to this much of a glow is more than, Naruto. Ah, I see you found chi, Akko smiled. Although her smile quickly withered when she saw the clone's expression. Something which Naruto noticed too. What did you two do? He feared the worst. She had too much catnip. The clone cautiously backed away from Akko, whose fury began to rise. The Hyuga might not be much of a shinobi, but she was definitely terrifying. She somehow got her paws on a firecracker, and, I don't know how it happened, but the damn thing exploded. Firecrackers are meant to do that, moron, Naruto growled. But that isn't what got you this nervous, is it? Ah, not really, the clone laughed sheepishly. The firecracker must have hit something else. What happened? Anko laughed. Did she blow up an entire compound or something? Quote. I was joking, Anko froze. Why you don't mean that? Several buildings were destroyed in the explosion. Right now, the Uchiha grounds are on fire, the clone groaned. I never expected one silly firecracker to cause such destruction. You idiot. Naruto slapped his clone. You were just goofing off again, weren't you? I'm a clone, so why the hell not? The clone got annoyed. Me and my brethren are little more than slaves, living super short lives before we kick the bucket, so why not get a little fun? Karen grimaced when she saw her brother assault his very own clone. Or the clone her brother, she lost track of who was who at this point. Meanwhile, Rado was trying to maintain his neutral composure. Anko did not bother with that, and was laughing her ass off. Which wasn't particularly difficult, considering how short her skirt was and how cold the evening air was. It would have frozen off anyway. Akko, on the other hand, was hovering over the bound criminal feline. Kanai has forgiveness. Yes, the catnip was still going strong. Karen wondered how much of the stuff the cat had used to get this high. Poof. Ah, that is Nissan busting his rebellious bunchen, she turned to her brother, intending to ask what he would do about. Poof. A second cloud of smoke appeared. Poof. Karen exclaimed, gawking at the two clouds of smoke. Where the hell did Nissan go? Where did the real Naruto go? For this, we need to go back a few steps. You see, the young Uzumaki had different plans for New Year's Eve. So he instead left a clone at the estate, while going into the village himself. To wish a certain girl a happy new year. Unfortunately for him, said girl's mother caught him while he knocked on the girl's door. I suppose I should see where my husband is, before he notices you, Hitomi had smiled, showing a mischievous side which even Hinata never saw before. Oh, and there isn't a better place to watch the fireworks than from the top of the Hokage monument. It is perfect. The young Hyuga heiress was still confused why her mother had acted like that. Why had she distracted Hiyashi? But with the given opportunity, Hinata had been too startled to be governed by her bashful nature. So the timid girl had asked Naruto if he wanted to join her, to see if the view which Hitomi was talking about was indeed that good. Which was why he had left a clone to seek out the cat that he had originally set out to find. Together they awaited the fireworks in silence. Sitting atop the stone head of Sarutobi Hiruzen, Naruto had fallen into a melancholic mood which Hinata rarely saw. Ever since he had been freed from the toxic clutches of the Kyuubi's malevolent influence, he had been more cheerful and open than she had ever seen him. So, even when he was melancholic, she still found some happiness in the fact that he didn't feel any need to put on a mask anymore. In fact, his honesty made her feel warm, made her feel safe and secure, yet paradoxically also very uncertain and afraid. Did I make a mistake? I just asked without thinking thing through. What if Naruto-kun rather stayed home? What if he rather stayed with his family, instead of there early? Naruto muttered, cutting off Hinata's rapidly darkening thoughts. Fireworks. He pointed down at the village, seeing her confusion. They both looked with interest at what they thought, from this distance, to be a bonfire. The Anbu aren't going to be pleased. You can say that again, Naruto chuckled. I pity the idiot who did this. Unknown to him, the two rebellious clones were currently arguing. The patient one scolding the impatient one, a heated discussion which evolved into a fistfight. With their creator's consciousness and memories, yet without any risk of the repercussions of their actions, the clones were often more reckless than Naruto himself. Irresponsibility also often led them to lose track of who their original actually was. But neither Naruto nor Hinata thought about this, as none of them could know. Instead, Naruto had become painfully aware of how close Hinata was. Some instinct within himself urged him to put his hand on hers, but he couldn't. He didn't know whether he should do such a bold thing. The entire Sasuke retrieval mission had been over and done, but neither Hinata nor he could talk about what happened very well. Not without blushing, at least. Trained as she was, both by Hitomi and the legendary Suzaku, Hinata saw the muscles in Naruto's hand twitch. Even in the frisky evening air, her face heated and reddened. With all the willpower she could muster, she forced her hand to stay put, to not put the limb away from him. She, hand in hand, with Naruto-kun. Her mind was on the brink of collapsing when Naruto's eyes suddenly widened. What have they done? He groaned. That moron. Why did he stop her? And Naruto-kun. He pointed at the spreading flames in the village beneath them. My clone failed to stop Chi from burning down the Uchiha district. He dropped back, now lying on her back, looked up at the stars which could already be seen. Sunlight had diminished to the point where darkness was already setting in. I guess my two stupid clones gave me a legit excuse to stay hidden for a bit longer. His mood suddenly changed, now smirking rather than contemplating the possible consequences of his actions. Already busted for one thing made him a little bolder. So he turned his head towards Hinata. But I'd be honored if you kept me company. Okasama-D did say that fireworks could best be seen from here. Hinata donned a shade of crimson which made Naruto worry whether she would faint again. To the point where he was startled when she lay down beside him, thinking she had indeed passed out. She was very much awake, though. Her eyes instantly looking away when he gazed at her. So close, his discomfort returned. Her hand lay only inches from his. Seconds became a minute, and as time passed the hand slid closer and closer to hers. Hinata would have smiled when she heard him gulp, if not for her own anxiety. Then she felt his hand. His warm and comforting presence. Too shy to utter a word, neither trusting themselves to utter anything coherent, both teenagers remained silent until the fireworks started. Mother was right. This is the perfect place to be. Chapter 63. Origins in Ashes. So let me get this straight. You want me to approve a C-rank mission, led by Mitarashi Anko, where you, Nara Shikamaru, and Tayuya of Otogakure go out of the village. That's what I just told you. Hokage, Naruto frowned. And she will be joining us as well. Is this your idea of earning her loyalty? Jiraiya sighed. What are you not telling me? She hid a diary out there, one written by the man whom she had a contract with. In a chain of events, the man's daughter was stolen away by one of Orochimaru's underlings. You meant to say that Tayuya is that girl? Yes. This is almost too coincidental, Jiraiya couldn't help but to remark. Even my books have better plot twists, and you're always insulting my masterpieces. I don't care what way your plot twists, Naruto shrugged. Tayuya is Suzume, and she says she has proof. And I trust her. And Tayuya, she doesn't trust a single person. Naruto wearily rubbed his temples. She'll probably try to escape, or do something foolish. Though, she calmed down quite a bit after I insulated the cursed seal which Orochimaru left on her. But she can suddenly become aggressive without any reason, so I'd say she is still rather unstable, but still, Relatively speaking, it is an improvement. Although it is rather annoying that she constantly calls me a perv. And her unstable condition is why you chose Shikamaru. Yes. Although, not just because his abilities are well suited for holding someone down. He'll probably have issues with Tayuya after Choji's death. Naruto brought it as diplomatically as he could. I think it would be useful for him to learn about Tayuya's roots, just as much as it is to her. His anger and grief aren't things which I can take away, but I can at the very least try to make him understand what drove Tayuya to act as one Orochimaru's elite soldiers. Besides, aside from you, Karen, and Ba-chan, he and Hinata are the only two who know that she is at the Uzumaki compound. I knew you were smart, Jiraiya smirked. But this is really something else. You're trying to get Shikamaru to accept Tayuya, and through him you could influence Shukaku, the Jonin commander. Also, with Choji's demise, Shikamaru's team is one person short, whereas Tayuya couldn't just be drafted into any team, considering her past. Quote. You never thought about those things. Jiraiya felt a sweat drop rolling from his forehead when he saw Naruto's blank stare. You just wanted to help out Shikamaru. Kinda. The blonde scratched the back of his head, laughing a bit awkwardly. But the other stuff is good too. I mean, I sort of offered to adopt Tayuya into the Uzumaki clan if she would desire to stay in Konoha, so I suppose I am considered to think about those things too, am I not? This clan head thing isn't as easy as it seemed. You're not really a clan head yet, Jiraiya laughed. But in a few years, yes, you will be able to take a position in the council as the clan head of the Uzumaki clan. But until that seat is restored, you'll just be the highest ranking person within your clan. Tayuya joining Team 10, I never really thought about that, Naruto pondered. I was considering asking Anko to look after her while I am gone for training. At the T&I. Yes, that seems to be a good route. Though, it is too early for the girl to move up that high. We aren't letting Genin near sensitive information sources. And T&I is basically the most sensitive department aside from my own office. So, let her earn her spot as a Chunin first. It will give her some time to adjust to the transition from Oto to here. But the mission, I'll approve of it. Do whatever it takes to gain her allegiance, as well as her knowledge. But not at the expense of her safety, nor yours. Thanks, Hokage. You're not just doing it for Shikamaru and Tayuya, kid. You're trying to figure out your own path just as well. And even if you didn't say so, it seems obvious you're trying to win the Nara boy for your cause. Our cause. In spite of his demanding task as Hokage, Jiraiya had always found ways to keep an eye on the boy. Whether through Kage Bunshin or through detailed reports from his faithful summoned amphibious friends, Jiraiya had always known what the boy had been up to ever since he was discharged from the hospital. He had even found two somewhat unlikely allies. While he was aware of Tsunade's concerns about the boy, Jiraiya still felt two of his aching ribs, a consequence of calling her Mother Hen. Jiraiya had not expected Hyuga Hitomi to step in. While not being exactly very fond of her husband and clan, Jiraiya had soon found that Hitomi was quite different from the regular Hyuga. He still remembered the day when Hiruzen had told him that Naruto was taken in by the Hyuga. The disbelief he felt at the act was, well, it had vanished after he started keeping tabs on Hitomi. This woman was clearly not to be underestimated, yet at the same time she genuinely seemed to care for Naruto. And where Hiashi held his clan's interests as first priority, and thus acknowledging Naruto's worth as Jinchuriki, Hitomi seemed to be motivated because of her eldest daughter. Or was it because she and Kushina knew each other? Anyway, she was well aware of his relation to Naruto and as such she had offered to help him to keep Naruto's legendary uncontrollable behavior, as she had called it, within certain confines. Jiraiya even suspected that she put her daughter up to it, telling Hinata just enough to get worried about Naruto, while not spilling any serious secrets. Because there was plenty to worry about when it came to Uzumaki Naruto. The shady organization called Akatsuki would eventually be trying to get their hands on Naruto. The other nations, most notably Kumogakure and Iwagakure, were showing just a little too much interest in the boy. And then there were the internal threats. It annoyed Jiraiya to no end that he couldn't get a firm grip on the most troublesome person of them all, Shimura Danzo. Much of his actions were still in the shadows, but Hiruzen had warned Jiraiya several times to look out for the cripple shinobi. While it was still uncertain how much support Danzo had in the council and from the clans, Jiraiya had to remain careful. That Hitomi warned him about the same man, however, worried him. What ties could Danzo have had with Hiyashi's brother, Hazashi? Why couldn't that man's murder be solved, even by a clan of allegedly all-seeing shinobi? And why had Hazashi's personality changed so much? None of it added up. Filling the gap in Team 10 would, even though it sounds rather disrespectful to the poor boy that perished, solve lot of headaches. Everyone seems to be scheming to get their son or daughter into a team with 2 clan heirs, a team which is led by the Sarutobi clan head on top of it. It would also remove my worries about Tayuya being in danger. Because, I know that Asuma is one of the few whom I can trust with this matter. But it is yet to be determined what secrets this girl holds, secrets of which even she could be unaware. Yasama. Even if the brat didn't think this through enough, his heart is at the right place, so I believe he'll succeed. There's a lot riding on this, the Godime Hokage side. Naked women. What? Where? Jiraiya was suddenly jerked out of his train of thought, and looked around. Only to see an annoyed Iruka standing in front of his desk. Now that you're back on Earth, Hokage-sama, the Chunin walked the fine line between scolding and outright disrespect. It made Jiraiya wonder how long the man had been attempting to reach him. I've got these documents you need to look through. The Yamanaka and Nara clans filed this request. And Tsunade-sama wrote this, containing ideas on redesigning the hospital. It would seem she did indeed take over the place, and decided to stay for now. Paperwork. Jiraiya groaned. How I wished I was but a simple shinobi. Getting out on mission like that brat is far more fun than this. Governing the village is more important than any other mission. Iruka still hadn't lost his teacher mode, as Jiraiya had come to call it. Though, Tsunade had remarked several times that she thought it was a good thing that there was someone other than her around who had the guts to lecture Jiraiya. If only it was less paper-ish. Why do I still feel like I'm giving an academy student his homework? Iruka grumbled as he left his superior's office. You should ask your Hyuga girlfriend, Jiraiya snickered. Hyuga Akko had called the old pervert immature several times now. You want to make camp already? Yeah, we're nearly here, Naruto shrugged. She is going to retrieve what we're here for, while we wait here. We barely left Konoha. Why on earth did you take me, Anko, and that criminal on this mission? Shikamaru frowned. His disgust for Tayuya wasn't exactly hidden. Even though he had given his word earlier, and brought Tayuya back to Konoha, he still held a grudge against the girl for her part in the deaths of Choji and Shino. I talked to Kurenai-sensei yesterday, when I visited the graves of Choji and Shino, Naruto said calmer than he felt about it. In fact, he had accidentally met her, but he had been glad that he did. Seeing their graves had been rather difficult. Initially he had thought he could do it alone, that he preferred to do it that way so that he had some time of his own. But guilt was something that burdened him. If only he had been faster, he'd have been able to prevent Choji's death. Naruto knew that if he had used some of the Kyuubi's chakra, Choji would still be alive. It is not your fault, was what Kurenai had told her former student. She had told him about the first time she lost someone dear to her, her father. How it had been the Kyuubi which killed him. How hard it was at first to live with such a loss, how she had blamed herself for following her orders that day. The doubt she had felt, whether she could have saved him or not, the phrase, what if, was something hated by many shinobi. Guilt was something that broke many, as was visible in most of the elite within the shinobi force, as they were the ones who had repeatedly faced the worst sides of their world. The eccentric personalities of many of the elite were the visible proof of coping with that stress. It didn't soothe Naruto's pain, but it did solidify his beliefs that there was something fundamentally wrong with their world. The Akamichi clan was grieving for their fallen son, Kurenai had said, but the Aburame were different. They had a doctrine of logic, a cold and seemingly emotionless view on their world. They had their private section at the burial grounds, but even that was atypical. The bodies of the dead were buried, and a young tree was planted atop. A tree which would house many of the insects which the clan grew for their unique fighting style. Nothing was waste, it was logical. But if that was logic, then it was an abomination in Naruto's view. They weren't tools, they were humans. It wasn't logical that Shino had found death, it wasn't something that should be written off as if it was an occurrence as normal as a rain cloud. It disgusted Naruto that Shino's family would think like that. In Choji's case too, his name was engraved in the monument stone as if he had been some kind of hero. It was even considered to be an honor, as the boy had died during an illegitimate mission. Honor. Heroism. As if their deaths should pose as an example for others, it was their lives that should be. I visited their graves, Naruto repeated after a sigh, forcibly dragging his mind back to the present. Sensei told me how everyone is doing. How Ino is being looked after by her father, to ensure she hasn't sustained lasting mental damage. How Kiba and Hinata have healed, and have doubled their training regime. How Karen has taken a blow from all this, how she has sworn never to be useless again. Without her we never would have found. That isn't the point, Shikamaru. Naruto shook his head. She felt weak and useless, no matter what we say. She blames herself for Choji's death. She is training both with Kurenai-sensei, asked me for more scrolls on Fuinjutsu, and on top of it all she also works shifts at the hospital, learning from both Ba-chan and Shizune while she's there. With Team 10 out of commission, Team 7 disbanded, and Team 8 focusing on recovery and training, you were the best candidate for this mission. You could have axed Tenten. Lazy as ever, you still seek ways to dodge any responsibility, Naruto chuckled. Even though he guessed that Shikamaru's true reservations were against Hyuga, not against the effort it took for this mission to succeed. Yes, Tenten was available for missions as well, now that Lee is at the hospital and Neji is forbidden to strain himself. But I think you were the better choice, he nodded at Anko, who was uncharacteristically silent as she listened, chewing on her last dango stick. Do you hate Anko? Wait, what? The Nara blinked, surprised by the sudden change in atmosphere. What do you mean, hate Anko? The question isn't that difficult, is it? Why would I do such a troublesome thing? Shikamaru frowned, not understanding. She has the same sort of cursed seal that Hyuga has, Naruto clarified. An earlier experiment, to be more specific, a seal that is weaker and never progressed to a state like Hyuga had to endure. It is why I am the guard of this little brat, Anko poked the gagged girl. Shortly after leaving Konoha the girl had had one of her fits, again. The cursed seal warping her perception, she had tried to attack them, and when that failed she had uttered one profanity after the other, until even Anko was fed up with it after initially calling it cute. Gagging her had brought a sweet silence, although the look in her eyes still spelled out murder. The seal always tries to corrupt me, to use my doubts, my anger, and my hatred in order to control my actions, Anko continued. It strengthens those feelings, and thrives in the absence of happiness. This is how Orochimaru breeds his soldiers. He buys, steals, or gets them when they are stupid enough to volunteer. But they are young, and then puts them through hell, weeding out every last shred of hope they have in their hearts. And the strongest of those who survive that hell, he grants the power of the cursed seal. They become his slaves. I was born and raised in Konoha, which gave me a will strong enough to resist the damn thing, but what about a child who has gone through that hell? Someone whose will was already broken. They wouldn't have had a chance to resist the seal, and their minds would be subjugated. You make it sound like there is no hope for her, Shikamaru glanced at the bound red head. But if that were the case, we wouldn't be here. She knows who Hyuga has been before Orochimaru's men snatched her from her family. That is why we are here. This is near the place where Chi left the diary Hyuga's father gave her, the Uzumaki spoke up. You are here because I wish I could help you. I can feel the hatred brewing in your heart, Shikamaru. I understand why, but at the same time I want you to understand that Hyuga is a victim too. That all of the Sound Four have been victims, even those who eventually came to enjoy the evil they committed. Right, Shikamaru's skepticism was clearly seen on his face. The same thing you said about following orders, on how Konoha was no different. Do you have any idea of how many people are assassinated by Konoha on a yearly basis, kid? Anko chimed in. Do you know the shit we do at the T&I department? Torture isn't the thing you kids are taught at the academy, fun as it may be to break the minds of scum, it is still the sort of knowledge is deemed too dangerous for your fragile minds. Not to mention that it isn't always the type of cliché villain that we get at our department. You think shinobi from enemy villages see themselves as the bad guy. Konoha is built on lies and grudges, Naruto grimaced. The dream of its founders has been corrupted and deformed. People hide it underneath their facade of proper behavior, but in front of my senses none can hide. And if you think about it, haven't you noticed how most people were more agitated that we defied orders, rather than shocked by the deaths of Shino and Choji? How many people have you heard talking about how grave the loss of the last Sharingan is? I bet it is more than the few who actually admit that he's a traitor, a missing nin who now has a price on his head. Quote. Do you think I am good, Shikamaru? The Kyuubi corrupted me, slowly but surely, until I became paranoid enough to suspect everyone. Layers of seals upon seals, barrier after barrier. Like a predator, I waited until I trapped those with too much malice in their hearts. I deemed myself a judge and executioner, Naruto grunted. I thought I could see the truth, arrogantly believed that I did good as I removed those who were too vile for our world, yet instead I only discovered what a short-sighted fool I have been. Or probably still am. But tell me, do you think one act of evil can stop another? I'd say that it is a good thing if you kill someone to prevent a murder, Shikamaru said. Murderers lost their right to live. And who would murder you to prevent you from becoming a murderer? Naruto sighed. I was still at the academy when Hokage told me about his view on the world, on how we all were trapped in this giant cycle of hatred. A cycle where one act of hatred caused another, which in turn caused another act of hatred, and so on. Is that what you want to do with your life, Shikamaru? It is our life, Shikamaru shrugged. It isn't perfect, but that much is obvious. We are shinobi. It is what we do. What the kid asks is whether you're accepting the world as it is. Anko shook her head. Do you want to contribute your own acts of hatred, or would you rather change things? You're a smart kid, so you are probably aware that I'm an outcast, and that this is the reason why Sandaime-sama assigned me to look after the kid, and why Godime-sama ordered me to keep an eye on this little menace as well. By your logic, people like Tayuya and me wouldn't deserve life. By your logic, Naruto lost his right to live, as well. You share his view, Shikamaru nodded to Naruto. Hokage's view, Naruto corrected him. I'm not smart enough to figure out all that just by myself. Hokage pointed the way. The Kyuubi showed me the vile nature of the world, Haruki educated me, and Hinata eventually taught me that there is also good in life, as well as the fact that people can change for the better even though I only sense darkness. She showed me that there is hope, even if I have lost faith. Without all of them, I'd never come this far. Without them the Kyuubi would have won. I dare say that I'm still lost in the dark, searching for an answer on how to change the world. And this is the true reason why you asked me, and why Jiraiya-sama permitted you to drag me along. Shikamaru frowned, his mind being quick on the uptake as usual. To see if I, after what happened to Choji, would choose revenge and hatred, or change and understanding. Seriously, why does everything with you have to be so damn troublesome? Which raises the question whether you were serious about Suzume, Whisker Two-Leg, she whispered lowly. Or if you are just using her to convert lazy Two-Leg. Welcome back, she. I take it you heard everything. Answer me. Two-Leg, the black and white Bakeneko stalked closer, her form growing as she prepared for combat. My offer for her stands. If she is willing, I'll take her into the Uzumaki clan, and we'll fabricate the lie that she's part Uzumaki and fell into Orochimaru's hands. That is what I promised. Naruto frowned, but otherwise unfazed by Chi's aggressive stance. I thought you knew me long enough to know that I do not go back on my word. But the key phrase is, if she is willing, and this is something I've started to doubt. At first she was pretty reasonable, but after the days since I isolated and encased her cursed seal, she slowly seems to be losing her mind. I know you don't want to see it, Chi, but I don't want to lie to you. Suzume Two-Leg will change when she knows the truth. Crazy Snake's Two-Leg said that she needs something to balance out the malice of her seal. The love of her parents will reach her, she insisted, although Naruto suspected that even the little feline had her doubts. Tayuya's volatile personality was especially hard to Chi, who cared about the person whom the girl had once been. Tayuya could curse Orochimaru for all that was unholy at one moment, yet desperately attempt to get back to Otogakure at the next. Naruto came to realize how little power the sealing method he had used to counteract the cursed seal actually had, if the person who carried the seal didn't have the will to resist its corrupting influence. In hindsight, it wasn't very surprising that Sasuke gave in to the temptation, given all the pain and hatred in his heart. Right now, Hyuga was angry. Bound and gagged as she was, all she could do was giving her dirtiest glares. And the current glare was particularly hateful. I think your story has to be very good if you want to get through to that troublesome girl, Shikamaru sighed with his what a waste of time voice. Obviously he rather planted a kunai in her throat. Shikamaru was surprisingly vindictive, Naruto noted, even when Hyuga wasn't even the one who had slain Choji. As Whisker Two-Leg told you before, she turned to Hyuga, but not after glaring at the Nara. I lived on an island with my kin. I wasn't exactly popular, being too tiny and too curious. Rather than honing my fighting ability, I loved books and stories of the world of the two legs, which made me an oddity. Even for those related to me. Still, they were my family. One day our island was hit by a large tidal wave, and I was swept away. Back then, I was terrified by humans, thinking they were giant monsters who'd eat me alive. Instead, when I woke up, a little girl was poking me. A little pinkish red-haired dwarf, who talked some kind of gibberish. She hasn't grown up all that much, Anko snickered. Like you are much better, Dango Two-Leg, she glared. I heard you and Red-Eye Two-Leg discuss something very interesting, perhaps I should. Don't you dare, Anko hissed. I'll kill you if you talk about that. So little courage for someone with such a big mouth, she shook her head. As I was saying, I was found by a little girl. I had never met a human or a child, so I thought you were a dwarf. Through you I met Shiori, who had the same color of hair, making me realize that I was found by a human and her kitten. Through Shiori and her husband Mitsuha, I found that humans were not as evil as my elders had told me. Shiori, Mitsuha, and you, Suzume, became my family. The months I've spent with you were the happiest of my life. Naruto saw the look in Hyuga's eyes, not the hateful glare of before, but something else. Skepticism. Doubt. He nodded to Anko, who removed the gag. You're so full of shit, cat, Hyuga coughed, her throat still being dry. Do you have any fucking idea how many orphans there are? Hidden villages love them, gather them into orphanages and select those who show a modicum of talent, and train them to do their dirtiest jobs, the ones no child with parent would be trained for. Seductresses, undercover spies, assassins, suiciders, nobody gives a flying fuck about those orphans. My fucking parents sold me. I was as good as one of those shitty orphans, I was. Here, she cut Hyuga's rant off, taking a picture from the diary she had found in her old hideout. This was your family. 2 adults with one child, barely a year and a half old, were to be seen. Hyuga's breath stalked when she saw the woman holding the child. Shiori looked a lot like her, way too much for it to be coincidence. Although, Hyuga saw the man, Mitsuha, had the same eyes and the same somewhat tanned skin color. It was as if she looked into some kind of distorted mirror, where she saw elements of herself in these 2 older people. Mitsuha had an ability he was born with, a keke genkai you Two-Legs call it. He could literally put his emotions into the music he made, weaving illusions. Often, when you couldn't sleep, he sang you a song which calmed you, she continued. It is all here, in the diary. The last entry, however, is after the day our lives changed. A sword-wielding Two-Leg murdered Shiori, burned the house, and stole you away. When I came to from my unconsciousness, Mitsuha had found us. We began our desperate chase to find the evil Two-Leg, which was made possible because I put a mark on you. Mark. Bakeneko usually live solitarily, so we mark our partners. A little paw mark of chakra is enough to track each other for years. But the range at which I can sense that mark is limited, and soon the evil Two-Leg moved too far from us. Forming a contract with Mitsuha Two-Leg was the only option I had to increase my chakra and to find you again. Unfortunately the evil Two-Leg used others, the huge Two-Leg that died in the forest, the one who killed chubby Two-Leg, to ambush us. Mitsuha died at his hands as well, Suzume, but he never gave up on you. Even in his final breaths, he loved you. You weren't sold. They'd never give up on you, not even if it killed them. The family portrait wasn't the only picture in the diary. Photos of Shiori and Mitsuo when they were younger, with an older man who looked a lot like Matuso, pictures of when they wed, pictures of their home, and more. Somewhere along the line Tayuya's defiance had been broken. Her skepticism was unable to endure the fact after fact which she kept throwing at her. The realization that her entire life had truly been a lie, it was something even the cursed seal couldn't corrupt. Not when she could see the tangible proof. Words could be twisted, people deceived, but these pictures didn't lie. The happiness and love carried through the years, and reached the long-lost daughter. The Nara grimaced when he saw the girl break down, lost now that the grasp of hatred from the seal was broken. It was as if it robbed her from all strength, because she soon collapsed. It was a good thing they had set up camp prior, and Anko gently put her in one of the tents. Should I bind her? The snake mistress frowned. Meh, I'll just make sure she can't access her chakra. You keep watch, kitty. Is this what Orochimaru does to his own? Shikamaru wondered. Dragging children from their homes and turning them into ruthless murderers. It isn't something he invented, Naruto sighed. I've lived at an orphanage, remember? I've seen children disappear, but no one ever paid much interest where those children ended up. After all, why would the authorities in Konoha care about the clanless people? How difficult do you think it was for a girl like Tenten to even be allowed to enter the academy? This borders treason. Shikamaru gave him a sharp look. You know what you are implying. You sound hardly any better than the average missing nin who proclaims that Konoha is evil. Is that the conclusion you've reached? The blonde said sadly. That I'm a traitor for stating the flaws in Konoha's current system. I thought you were smarter than that, Shikamaru. Tell me, how many more need to die like Choji, how many graves are you prepared to dig, before you realize that this system is inherently wrong? If Konoha was as good as it claims to be, would it train children as soldiers? Would it send those children off to die in the Chunin exams, an event that was created as a replacement for open war? A village which glorifies death, like that of the Yondaime Hokage, yet shuns those who try to preserve life, like Hatake Tsukumo. That what you want? I don't know, Shikamaru grimaced. What do you want? I want to break the cycle of hatred. I want to stop the murder of innocents. I want to stop the creation of new people like Tayuya and Choji, or like me and Gaara. The old pervert is right. He wants a village which is truly good, where morality isn't determined by those who pay us for the mission. A village striving for peace. Naruto, why aren't you or Jiraiya telling this to my dad and the other clan heads? You think those fools haven't heard this already? Anko laughed bitterly. Although this kid tells me a new version, and a better one I dare say, your old man heard something just like it from the Hokage himself. As well as his predecessors. But clans don't want change. They don't want equality. If they didn't want the current system, they would have changed it a long time ago. Sandaime-sama tried, but he was too lenient. Too soft. Perhaps he just gave up after trying. Because, in spite of his beliefs, he did allow fanatics like Danzo to hold power. Danzo, who is backed by several clans, which share his beliefs that all emotions should be banished from the heart of a shinobi, that shinobi should be governed by logic instead of the heart. That shinobi are merely mindless tools. You have seen what emotions can do, Naruto pointed at Tayuya. It can both destroy and bring salvation. You are smart enough to know that logic doesn't solve everything. Life isn't a game of shogi. Unless you think that Choji's death is merely a logical conclusion of the decisions you guys made when chasing Sasuke, he could feel the anger spark in Shikamaru, and saw the Nara glare at him. Which brings us back at our current mission. Do you still think Tayuya deserves death? Do you think we have the right to decide such a thing? So, you wanted to meet me all the way down here. Hyuga Hideo looked around, not bothering to hide his disapproval. The old Hyuga had walked through a maze of tunnels in this surprisingly big underground complex. You wanted to speak to me in my real office, Danzo droned in his usual emotionless voice. It raises the question why you insisted on that. People who always remain in hiding are difficult to trust, Hideo said disdainfully. It is why my son lost faith in you. Though, that annoying wife of his is the true reason for that. Although I'm not sure if her suspicions about you were so wrong. Not that it matters to me. The Sandaime was a fool. It was his fate to die, just as his views are destined to fail. Hyuga Hitomi, the obstacle we both face. And what did you do to my youngest? Hideo changed the subject, the veins around his white eyes bulging. Was it that hidden eye of yours? Quote, quote. Your genjutsu is commendable, and I doubt anyone would suspect you. Anyone but Hitomi, that is, Hideo pointed out. I only found that genjutsu because I had my suspicions about you using something like it, but her sight is better than mine. Even I cannot tell what that wretched woman can see or not. Are you trying to manipulate me into moving against that woman? Danzo lowered his voice. Whatever your eldest may be, he will not tolerate anyone harming his wife. And he will not be caught as easily as his brother. Yes, I used a genjutsu to make him do certain things. I needed information on that Jinchuriki your clan was housing, since no one was willing to provide me otherwise. And I must commend the boy for his security measures. Even my agents couldn't spy on him in there. So you created that mess. Though, at least I have to thank you for cleaning your own garbage. Even I felt some reluctance when it came to ordering the murder on my son. Failure or not, he was my flesh and blood. You most likely only hesitated because you risked getting exposed. Danzo smiled a little, mocking the elder. But that is not why you are here. We share certain problems. My daughter-in-law is one of them, but her daughter will be the next. While Hinata is only heiress in name, the way Hitomi is teaching her bothers me. The worst part is that with that annoying woman nearby, none of my men can spy on them. We still haven't exactly pinpointed her range. If that weak girl is taught her techniques, and assumes my son's position, we would both be facing problems. My clan would be destroyed if that weakling would come to lead it. Those peace-loving fools, Danzo sighed. The second problem we share is of the same nature. Jiraiya, Hideo agreed. What he said about his vision for the future is troubling. Equality is a thing no clan is welcoming. And I know for a fact that you hold your position and influence due to the support of several clans. Although none do so openly. Danzo narrowed his visible eye as if he was re-examining his opponent. Equal rights for the clanless would upset the balance of power within Konoha. The fool is popular among the clanless, as they see him as one of their own. Jiraiya's background has always been covered in shrouds. An orphan, parents unknown, Hideo repeated from the files he kept on the Toad Sage. He is, however, not a man we openly oppose. Orochimaru, Tsunade, Jiraiya, those three have reached a level of strength that surpasses my own. However, I do have my eyes set on someone who is soon going to surpass them in terms of strength. Uzumaki Naruto, the Hyuga hissed. Murderer of my kin. That wretched brat has been a thorn in my side for far too long. To think he hid himself for that long, even from our eyes. Yet if we can capture him, and make him join us, he'd be a very valuable asset. Make him join you, you mean? Don't try to fool me. I wonder why you summoned me here at such short notice, and even agreed to this location, but now I see, Hideo smirked slightly. I see you are hasted, while nothing has really changed. A few kids died, but that is always unavoidable in our trade, and that Uchiha betrayed us. As was to be expected, I would say, considering the history of his clan. But those things are not what is troubling you. It is that girl that the Uzumaki is hiding, she forces your hand. Yes, I always make sure to keep an eye on that brat, and his companion had the same strange mark as the snake's apprentice. Danzo was quite certain that Hideo didn't know about the hidden deals with Orochimaru, but he couldn't rule out the possibility. The Hyuga elder was well aware of the value that knowledge held in a hidden village. And the Hyuga were born spies, even if their pride and honor did not openly allow them to be such. Danzo, however, knew that Hideo valued greed over pride. Still, if my dealings with Orochimaru would come out in the open, I would lose many supporters, ruining Root. Which is exactly why the girl poses such a threat. She was one of Orochimaru's elite, so she knows about those deals. Luckily those seals Orochimaru puts on his pets prevent them from sharing secrets. And the automatic suicide mechanism when the T&I department gets their hands on them is also a useful trick. Still, the Uzumaki grounds have proven difficult to breach. When the Haruno girl gains the trust of the Jinchuriki, I might be forced to expend that asset in order to remove the threat which that Odo Nin poses. You require my help, the aid of my faction within the clan, in order to make your plans succeed. Hideo knew he had turned the tables. He had seen it right, and now it was time to exploit the situation, because he'd now be the one making the demands. There are certain concessions I have to request, in return for our aid. But if you aid us, I will provide you with bait to capture your prey. You are playing dangerous games, Hyuga Hideo. I have seen your men lurk in the shadows, but do you think I entered this place without taking precautions? The Hyuga are the strongest clan, Danzo, do not forget that. So let us broker a deal that satisfies the both of us. Let us determine the price which the Jinchuriki boy is worth to you. Quite eloquent. Nara brain to action, heart, moron like you. She felt her entire body ache. Every vein in her body seemed to burn, and her skin felt hot and cold at the same time. Meanwhile, drifting between consciousness and unconsciousness, she heard fragments of a conversation. What the hell, where am I? A more pressing question, though, was who she was. Tayuya of the North Gate. No, Hokuman no Tayuya had perished along with the other gates of the Sound Four. Or not. The insurmountable power that had held her in its grasp seemed so insignificant now. What had changed? She recognized the voices. The crazy woman with the purple hair, the one who kept poisoning her so that she couldn't access her chakra, was talking to that blonde menace about some Nara, who had been lost in thought ever since. Ever since what? Were they enemies or friends? The pain in her neck increased, urging her to murder them, murder everyone who kept her from her. That lying fucktard is no longer my master, she realized, and the power of the seal receded. It didn't disappear, but it didn't try to influence her either. The silence gave her a chance to think. To remember. Family. Shiori and Mitsuha, the parents of Suzume. Suzume who had been stolen by Kenta, the murderer of her mother. Suzume who had been tormented for years, twisted into the girl she now was, Tayuya. But Tayuya didn't feel like Tayuya anymore, nor did she remember Suzume. What does a fucking name matter? I've been Tayuya. As long as I can recall, so I'm still Tayuya. Regardless of what the cat says. Still, Suzume had something alluring. The idea of family, of warmth, of safety, it overwhelmed her. Never in her life had she considered the possibility. Tayuya of the North Gate had thought that she had been born to parents who had sold her into slavery, and had hating her own life because of it. Yet in truth, Suzume had been born to loving parents who had given their lives in an attempt to rescue her. I was loved, the very idea boggled her mind. She'd been a shinobi, a tool, her entire life. An object, not a person. Or so she had thought. The cat, she caused, because of her that blonde guy spared my life. She struggled to open her eyes, and saw Anko look at her with a wide grin. Seems like you were right, kiddo, she seems pretty sane to me. She hasn't tried to plant a kunai in my throat, which is a good sign, Naruto agreed with no small amount of sarcasm. How do you feel, Tayuya? Yeah, you kinda collapsed on us, Anko frowned. Just take your time to recover some strength. We'll head back to Konoha once you're ready. Unless she wants to go elsewhere, Naruto suggested. A suggestion that drew the protests of the black and white cat which had been resting right next to Tayuya. My offer still stand, I never go back on my. I accept. Word. Good. Naruto smiled when he realized what Tayuya just said. Then you're ready to be an Uzumaki. Quote, quote. This isn't going to end up like that shirt thing, is it? With you misunderstanding my every word, he sighed, seeing how she glared at him. I told you that I'd make sure you would be adopted into my clan, nothing more. Just like Karen Nichan. You have a sister. Well, not really. Naruto scratched the back of his head while he laughed. But Karen always wished she had family. I've always been alone as well, so we kinda agreed to call each other brother and sister. Or do you want that too? If you want to die, Tayuya glared. Such clingy stuff was still a bridge too far for her. I take that as a no. Ah well, your loss. Naruto's mood didn't falter for a second. Anko here will be the one who looks after you. Before you ask why, she has a cursed seal too. An earlier version of it, but still. She knows what it is to deal with the seal's corrupting influence and will help you get stronger. Besides, once I am gone for training, someone has to keep sure you're secure. Orochimaru won't be pleased once he figures out that you've betrayed him, and that Snake has bound to have an infiltrator or two in the village. Why do you even accept me so easily? Hyuga felt suspicious that the guy who had been willing to kill her a little while ago could now be so carefree. I sense malice, remember. I sensed your change, Naruto shrugged. Let's hope Shikamaru changes just as much. The Nara aren't known as a clan that are easily convinced of anything, Anko shook her head. And how are we going to call the girl now? Hyuga or Suzume? I've been Hyuga as long as I can remember, the redhead remarked. But no longer will I be Hyuga of the North Gate. I guess I'm Uzumaki Hyuga now. It was one of the first times Anko saw Chi actually purring. Naruto smiled, and left them be. Instead, he went to the edge of the camp they had set up. A bit further ahead, he noticed the Nara sitting and staring into nothingness. So, figured out what view for the future of our world you prefer. Naruto spoke up after he had remained silent for a while, waiting for Shikamaru to speak up. At least you don't feel as dark as a while ago, and I'm glad. If you had decided to try to avenge Choji by attacking Hyuga, well, I don't like fighting friends. The entire crap with Sasuke was bad enough as it was. And he wasn't even a friend. There will be many more who won't accept her. Their minds will change, one person at a time. And you chose me as the first person, because I'm the son of the Nara clan head, Shikamaru guessed. Although on second thought, that isn't how you think. And it wouldn't have required the whole story of how you wish to change Konoha. You're a friend, Shikamaru, and I didn't want you to lose yourself in a mad desire for revenge. Remember what it did to Sasuke. And on top of that you're quite skilled. When I was a kid I said I'd be Hokage, so that everyone would have to acknowledge me. But after meeting Gaara I came to realize that I wanted to become Hokage for different reasons. So that Jinchuriki like us wouldn't suffer as much. From that point on, I only expanded my list of things I think should be better in Konoha. But I know well enough that I'm not the person who could find solutions for everything. Up till now I solved most problems by removing them through force. I need people like Hinata or you to help me at the points where suck. I can't do everything alone. I tried, but it always seems to end badly. Kurenai-sensei told me that teamwork is necessary to cover the weaknesses you can't fix. Shikamaru didn't stop thinking at that point, though. In a class of clan heirs, you plan to create support for your future position as Hokage. Possibly even changing the current views of the clans through us. Smart. I had not expected you to think ahead like that. Hokage once told me that every generation will surpass the previous one. I think that our generation can fix the problem the previous one leaves us. Shikamaru looked at him for a while, as if he was calculating and weighing his options. In the end, the Nara nodded. It will take years before any of us holds a position of influence, but I agree that our world is imperfect. Those who hold power exploit these imperfections, profit from them, and therefore they won't be willing to change. But you hold a power that can make all that irrelevant in a few years. Perhaps. Or perhaps the Kyuubi defeats me, Naruto shrugged. What's more important is that there is a willingness to change among those who hold power. Or those who will eventually be the ones to hold power. I'm not intending to force my views on the village like some kind of dictator. Then again, this is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. I'll soon be gone for training, but if I'm still alive at the end of it, I'm not planning to leave the village as it is now. Not after all that has happened. You're gathering allies. Only the best, Naruto smiled. He wondered whether Gaara would be able to pull off the same thing in Sunagaku. They had shared their daydreams of them being Kage of their villages and changing the world that made them what they were, what they nearly became. But for now those dreams were still just that. But Naruto figured that with people like Hinata or Shikamaru at his side, or Kiba and Karen, things wouldn't be as impossible as they seemed. Don't be a kiss ass, it is troublesome, Shikamaru grimaced. I'll do it for Choji. I'll do it so that there will never be good and gentle people like Choji who have to lose their lives like he did. There are too many victims in our world. I've lost my best friend. But never again. Messed up people like us should make sure that this ends. In spite of the determination he heard, Naruto saw a few tears blinking in the Nara's eyes. He was a good friend. Rest for a while. We won't break camp until Tayuya has recovered to the point where she can travel, he mumbled. He counted himself lucky that they had been able to break the cursed seal's influence, but it left her weakened. But Anko was confident that Tayuya would pull through, even though the seal had corrupted the girl far more than it had done to Anko. But learning the truth about her parents, reading Michuo's diary, seeing the pictures, it gave her a source of hope and love which Anko never had. Although Naruto did have to dodge a Senbon when he said she had Rado as her personal source of hope. Mission accomplished. Naruto smiled at a weary Jiraiya. Small wonder, considering the stockpiles of paperwork that were seen in the office. He looked around, and frowned. Anbu. Some privacy please, Jiraiya mumbled. It's been a long day, kid. Successful on both accounts. Yes, Shikamaru answered before Naruto could speak. You could have just told me all this beforehand, though. Would have saved a lot of time and effort. Lazy as a Nara. They didn't invent that proverb on a coincidence, Jiraiya smirked. But I trusted Naruto's judgment on this. He can sense things which I can't, after all. And you girly, stop the hiding act please. Tayuya lowered the hood and removed the mask she wore to avoid detection. If you say it's safe, geezer. And what? Tayuya frowned. I've taken the bloody bait, okay. I know about my past now, how my life was burned to ashes. I'm pissed at how I've been misled all this time, how my entire life was nothing more than a fucking sham. I don't particularly give a crap about this village, but it is a fairly safe place to stay away from Orochimaru until I'm strong enough to murder that piece of shit. And Kenta, I'm going to make that asshole pay for the death of my parents and ruining my life, damn it. What about your loyalty? I don't answer to a single fucking person. I owe that cat, I owe Whiskers, but other than that. I suppose that's good enough for the time being. Thank you for your part in the mission, Shikamaru, and while I'm sure you've figured it out already, I must order you to keep quiet about this mission. I suspect that Orochimaru has contacts within Konoha, and as such this mission is qualified as an S-rank secret until further notice. Also, the stuff which the Gaki told you could cause some problems if you'd spread it. As you command, Hokage-sama, Shikamaru bowed and left the office. Now then, girly, can you shed any light on the little snitch we have in our midst? Stop calling me that, damn it, Tayuya scowled. Can they know about this too? Anko and Naruto. Yeah, both have plenty of reason to hate Orochimaru, and they've both done enough to earn my trust, Jiraiya smiled. And that cat of yours might be full of mischief, but she's completely loyal to you and Naruto. Speaking about him, I even hear that Naruto proclaimed himself as my successor. You got my word on it, Naruto stuck up his thumb. I don't give a crap. And I'm Uzumaki Tayuya now, not, girly, Tayuya grunted. As for your little security breach, well, it is safe to say that, little, isn't the best word to describe him and his heartless flunkies. Shimura Danzo, Jiraiya sighed. I knew it. Then why did you? I needed confirmation. Is he alone? He has his own organization. I'm not familiar with the details, but he had enough power to make sure we could observe the Uchiha princess and drag him out of the village without any issues. Apparently he and Orochimaru struck some kind of deal on it. So I'd say he's a big fucking thorn in your wrinkly ass. Anko, Naruto, and you too, Tayuya, Jiraiya lost every shred of his usual goofy persona, and turned completely serious. You all know that Danzo is someone who has quite some leverage. He is a sneaky opponent who won't go down easily. You will need to be wary of him, as he will attempt to kill Tayuya, who forms the only witness to his treason. Without her, we have nothing. Hell, even with her we don't have a case to move against him, so. So you're going to do nothing? Naruto exclaimed. Hokage, that man is responsible for the entire chain of events which led to the deaths of Shino and Choji. How can you not move against him? And be a dictator who rules by force? How will any of the clans trust me if I removed Danzo by force? Did you forget about the support he has? Jiraiya chided him, and not really friendly either. Think, brat, if you want to be Hokage like you said, you can't just remove everyone who is opposing you. An alliance with the powerful is never to be trusted, is a saying that counts in Konoha too. If I become a threat too great, If people will fear me too much, they'll unite and overthrow me. I know, but you're too impatient. Perhaps I made a mistake by letting Anko guard you, Jiraiya joked. Good thing Rado is there to balance things out. They seem to connect quite well. Ha ha ha, Anko mumbled sarcastically. If we're going to joke, I presume we really aren't going to do a thing about Danzo. Can we go now? Ah, young love, Jiraiya smirked. So eager to get back to Rai. Hey, watch out with those Senbon, I'm your Hokage dammit. Don't throw them. Oi, Anbu. You brought that on yourself, Hokage, Naruto laughed. Got a new mission, though. I'm sorry that it is too soon, there are many things moving right now. You're off duty tomorrow. Get back here the day after at 10 o'clock, Jiraiya explained while dodging another needle. Tsunade Haim wants to see you, though. More inspections to see if my injuries have healed. Overprotective mother hen, Naruto sighed. Never let her hear that, Jiraiya laughed. Unless you possess the sake to buy your way out. Forgotten by them, there was another who knew to Yuya. Another who recognized the girl. She was flanked by a pale boy of her own age, and together they watched as Naruto and the cloaked and masked girl left the office of the Godime Hokage. No restraints, no force, they are even talking normally, the boy whispered. The emotionless expression annoyed Sakura a little, but her master had commanded her that she should strive to attain the same level of skill. A shinobi should not be troubled by the turmoil of their emotions, was what Danzo had said. And true to his word, the majority of his private band of shinobi were emotionless. And this also increased their dependency, as they had no personal goals or desires apart from completing their missions. Which was a flaw which annoyed the young Haruno. She was forced to serve Danzo to the fullest of her capabilities, but voicing her opinions was not something Danzo had required of her. Not in these matters, at least. In spite of the disguise, it is obviously her. I doubted the last time I saw her, but this time it is unmistakable. She was one of Orochimaru's squad who escorted Uchiha Sasuke. And the way Naruto acts does indeed suggest that he trusts her. Which implies the girl has become a threat to Danzo-sama. The Jinchuriki really has a dangerously creative approach to Fuinjutsu if he can undo her cursed seal. Sakura looked at him with one eyebrow raised, but the pale boy remained silent. His creepy smile unnerved her a bit, as it seemed utterly insincere. Danzo-sama stated that your mission to gain access to the Uzumaki grounds now holds priority, the pale boy continued with an emotionless voice that was at odds with his attempt to smile. Find a way to remove that girl, and fast. As Danzo-sama commands, Sakura bowed her head. The genjutsu which Danzo had used on her compelled her to obey his commands, or by proxy any of his authorized agents. And Naruto. Danzo-sama used expendable assets in attempts to assassinate Naruto-san before. Perhaps you could succeed if he trusts you, but it is unwise to even think about it. Unlike us, who are invisible to his ability to sense negative emotions, you are not a true root operative yet. Your emotions would betray you. If your assessment of his personality is correct, and he is as protective and impulsive as suggested, then the plan Danzo-sama has already set in motion will suffice. His susceptibility to anger will be his undoing. You will focus on the girl, she holds priority. Bonus. After the date. Sue, when do you think about sharing the juicy bits? Chan. Not now, Anko groaned. Too much alcohol in her system wasn't improving her state of mind. What? Did it go badly? Kurenai frowned. They were walking back from the tavern where they had shared a drink, Kurenai going to the Sarutobi compound and Anko to the Uzumaki grounds, where she basically was living now. I thought that Rado and you would work out pretty well. Oh, it went perfect. Too perfect, Anko sighed. There has to be some kind of catch. Everything that seemed good in my life turned out to bite me. More often than not in the literal sense of the word. You can't always expect the worst in. You've got Asuma. You know what to expect, Anko sighed. You are, well, you're great. You don't have some kind of shitty seal slapped on you that makes you an unstable predator. If only people knew how insecure you really are, Kurenai smiled softly. They wouldn't say those awful things about you if they knew the real Anko. And it seems to me like Rado is looking for the real Anko, and not the Anko you pretend to be. I know, Anko groaned. That makes it even worse, damn it. Why? You're wondering if someone can like you when you don't even like yourself. Fucking hell, you should have been a shrink. Anko exclaimed, wide-eyed staring at her friend. Don't stray from the subject, Anko. Yes, you know I do. Hating myself, I mean. After Orochimaru, you were one of the few people who didn't treat me like some kind of failed experiment. And it scares me, Kur-chan, it scares me that someone else would be nuts enough to see me as me. Would that person accept me, like you did? I don't know if I could take it if he'd reject me. The seal is always eating at me, always gaining influence, always trying to make me as evil as its creator. I don't know if I should care about Rado, risking that he'd be freaked out if he figures out what I am. And now you see the point why I insisted on you taking it slowly. You did listen, I hope. I wanted to drag him along and tear the clothes of him and I didn't. Hell, I stammered when I asked him for a second date, like a freaking little girl, Kur-chan. I'm such a moron. I looked like an idiot. He must hate me now. You're not an idiot, and Rado won't think so either. Kurenai dragged her friend towards her and hugged her. You need time, he needs time, so taking things slowly is for the best. Acting impulsively would only risk you chances with him. Because, in case you didn't notice, he has his scars too. And I'm not talking about not the outward type of scar. Quote. He had a girlfriend, Kurenai sighed. She had done her research on the man, in case she needed to protect her friend. She died at the night the Kyuubi attacked. As far as I could figure out, he never had a girlfriend again. He barely had any friends after that. Rado, Asuma, and I were part of the same genin team, remember? After her death he turned cold. On top of it Yondaime-sama, who he practically idolized, also perished. He took a bad hit, and became a Scrooge, an antisocial except for the squad he worked with. The only ones who he really opened up to were Genma and Iwashi. If he's like that, why? He sees the same Anko as I do. Kurenai patted her on her back. So then, when and where is your second date? I don't know. I gotta arrange that. I asked him this time. Why did that feel like I lost a match? Love is a battlefield. Sometimes you got to lose a battle to win the war, Kurenai smirked. Remember how I treated Asuma after he returned after his years in the daimyo's service? And people think that I'm the sadistic one. The uncharacteristic evil smirk on Kurenai's face made her friend laugh away her nerves. A certain curious cat decided to back off, aborting all planned pranks within the Sarutobi compound. She was mischievous, not suicidal. Chapter 64. The Walls of Takeda. The further you go north, the hillier the landscape gets, Kiba slumped down. It sucks, why can't we just seal our stuff instead of carrying it, sensei? It wouldn't be training if it were too easy for you, would it? Kurenai shook her head, although clearly amused by the whining in Izuka. He hadn't even discovered the weights she had slipped in his pack either, which only increased her amusement. At this pace we'll reach the first mountains tomorrow. You'll have fun walking up the slopes. No chakra. Yes Kiba. No chakra. Kurenai chuckled. So no Shikyaku no Jutsu, 4 legs technique either. We will arrive at Takeda Castle before tomorrow evening, Rado nodded. You 4 might be a bit later, considering that you first have to find that village. Our mission sucks. Karen sat down, too exhausted to unshackle her backpack. Why can't I go with Ni-san and help him with his mission? Zenchi-sama requested me specifically. It's not like I can help it, it seems hard to refuse a Chiji governor. If not, I would have been training instead, Naruto shrugged. You guys just take some rest. I'll get some wood to get a fire started and enough water for everyone to sober up a little. And I'll create a few clones to put out a barrier around camp. I'll hunt some deer, Rado nodded. It's so unfair, Kiba whined. Why does he get a mission requested by the Chiji of the northern region, while we have to go look for some shoddy old man who hasn't checked with Godaime-sama for a few months? Knowing our Hokage, it'll probably be some kind of pervert who got chased out of town. Hinata giggled at the thought, and even the exhausted pile of flesh that was called Karen gathered the energy to smile a bit. You shouldn't complain, Kiba-kun, at least you have the stamina to survive the journey. It would have been easier for you if you hadn't worked night shifts at the hospital, Kurenai chided her student. And for someone who received so little endurance training, you did remarkably well. Thank you, sensei, Karen groaned. Now I can at least die happily. Drama queen, Kiba chuckled. Even Akamaru seemed to agree, as he started to lick at Karen's ears, something which disgusted her enough to start moving again. Going up north, the group noticed the different scenery. While Konoha was surrounded by forestry, the further they traveled the more that density decreased. According to Kurenai and Rado, they would get to even more mountainous regions soon. Not with simple gorges or rocks, but a real mountain range. But between the dense forests and the mountains, there were many miles of grasslands. Incidental villages and farms were popping up every now and then, often exploiting the minor advantages the landscape gave them. For instance, there was one farm which almost looked like a fortress, positioned on top of a mountain. Bandits were the most dangerous pest in this area, so civilians often flocked together to protect their valuables. This strategy did not do much to protect their cattle, though. Cattle and farming seemed the primary ways of making money in the north, providing for much of the food of Hi-no Kuni. Zenshi, the Chiji of the region, controlled this vital area of the nation. From Takeda Castle, he reigned with an iron fist, or so Jiraiya had said when he had given Naruto the mission files. A second son of a low-ranked concubine, Zenshi could boast of being a blood relative to the daimyo, but it hadn't been enough to get a position in the capital itself. Jiraiya had warned that the circumstances of Zenshi's installment were a bit shady, even hinting at the man having been forced out of the capital. Jiraiya knew that Zenshi was intelligent, but also confided to Naruto and Rado that Zenshi was likely eager to gain power. So while the maintenance of the ceiling arrays surrounding the castle was a routine, albeit very much overdue, task, Jiraiya had warned them to be careful. Nobles were dangerous enemies, and the daimyo wouldn't be pleased if shinobi acted against his family, even if it was an ambitious lesser son. It was needless to mention that the daimyo controlled much of how Konoha acquired its funds. Hinata, however, had nothing to worry about in that regard. She and the rest of Team 8 were sent out to track down one of Jiraiya's old contacts, a man named Terasu. Apparently he hadn't responded to Jiraiya's messages for a while, something which was enough for Jiraiya to send out a team. With Terasu living near Takeda Castle, Team 8 had first been tasked with escorting Naruto and Rado, which effectively granted Team 8 two C-ranked missions at once, although Karen had said she'd rather help Naruto in his B-ranked mission. Fuinjutsu experts were rare enough, so that mission automatically paid out pretty good. B ranks would have been good for chipping away at their punishments after the whole insubordination stunt, as well. Kurenai-sensei. Hinata spoke up, wondering why her sensei kept looking at her. What is wrong? There isn't anything wrong, Kurenai laughed gently. How was New Year's Eve? The blush that followed made Kurenai's smile even wider. That good, eh? Quote. Naruto seemed quite happy too, Kurenai smirked. Then again, I first thought it was because his seal had been improved. His mood definitely brightened a lot now that the Kyuubi has less influence over him. But with the fires in the Uchiha district, and you two initially not being accounted for. We didn't start that fire, Hinata sputtered. We saw, but. Ho, sensei, please. Okay, I'll stop teasing, Kurenai laughed. Hinata sighed, and counted herself lucky that Karen and Kiba were busy at the other side of camp. Hinata's mind still went adrift every time she thought back to how she and Naruto had held hands, and all the teasing wasn't something she was waiting for. When will you and Asuma-sensei hold the festivities for your marriage? Hinata decided to play it safe and change the subject. That will take some time. Asuma just lost his father, Hinata, so we aren't really in the mood to throw a party. It just doesn't feel right. In addition, considering how Asuma now leads the Sarutobi clan, we can't get by with just a little party either, Kurenai sighed. At times, I'd almost regret winning the bet. You know, because you three did better than Team 10, Asuma had to propose, she smiled faintly at the memory. Men really don't know how to bet. Ah well, I guess it'll be another month or so before we start planning the official ceremonies. Oh. The death of Sandaime Sama has put the Sarutobi clan in quite a predicament, Kurenai admitted. He had such a standing within the village that his loss is not something the clan can easily cover. The Sarutobi clan will have a busy time ahead now that they have less influence in the political balance, Asuma especially, as all eyes are now on him. Then again, Hiruzen was nothing if not cunning. It was no coincidence that Asuma and Kurenai had held so many clan heirs under their command. Hiruzen seemed to have calculated for the possibility of his death, and made sure his heir would be in a position that firmly connected him to several clans. What's wrong with Asuma-sensei? Hiba spoke up. The tents are up, by the way. You shouldn't barge into another's conversation, it's rude, Hiba-kun, Karen sighed. Why didn't Anko-san join us? She asked nevertheless. Karen was never too good at containing her curiosity, after all. She is testing Yuya, Kurenai sighed. Although I wonder if Hokage-sama made a wise decision on that. You should have more faith in your friend, sensei. Naruto appeared, carrying several logs of wood, spread between him and his clones, that is. This should be enough to keep the fire going for the night. Anko knows better than anyone what Yuya is going through, so Anko is the perfect person to help her. You really think that girl remains sane? Hiba frowned. Akamaru said she still smells dangerous, and I'm inclined to agree with him, he added, while the pup whined in agreement. She knows her past. She realizes that she was once more than a tool, a human being who was loved by her father and mother, much unlike the lies that were fed to her by Orochimaru. Naruto disagreed. Sometimes those are the things that matter most. Especially now that the influence of the cursed seal is dammed in. She is in doubt, but she needs to see that no matter how dark the world seems, there still is that one ray of light you can believe in. Yes, this applied to himself as well, he realized. Without Hinata, Haruki, Hiruzen, or Jiraiya, how badly would his head have been messed up if he had lived 12 or 13 years without cherishing hope in even one person? The Kyuubi would have torn him to bits, or his mind would have contorted itself into ways to hold the creature off that would be equal to insanity. Perhaps he just would have torn his own mind apart and buried the darker parts. Perhaps he would have acted like a clown, just to hide his pain. Just look at Gaara, or me. People need something to hold on to. No matter how small it is, you'll need something to endure it all, especially when there's something actively trying to invade your mind. I hope she'll manage to pass the tests, Kurenai agreed. If her loyalty can be proven, she'd be a great addition to Konoha. I mean, as a genjutsu specialist, I can't help but look forward to working with someone who can literally weave illusions through music. She won't join Team 8, I think, Naruto frowned. And someone from the Yamanaka clan is going to aid Anko. He hoped Ino would be up for the task. It would be good if she had an unbiased image of the girl who might join her team. Although, he knew that Inoichi had reported that his daughter had suffered quite a bit from the backfired attempt to invade the twisted mind of one of Orochimaru's insane minions. But she'll sure be a strong addition to the Uzumaki clan. I still can't believe that she's an Uzumaki, Hiba admitted. But if Tsunade-sama said it's true. Hinata looked at Naruto, clearly uncomfortable. I guess I should tell them that she isn't. Naruto laughed. But other than you guys, I don't want anyone to know about that, okay? I just got Ba-chan to state that truly supporting the claim is impossible due to Orochimaru's experiments, but that she does show remarkable similarities to the Uzumaki bloodline. Her hair is a physical proof of it, he tapped Karen on her head. Uzumaki are known for their red hair. Yet you are blonde as a Yamanaka, Hiba frowned. Genetics are an odd thing, Naruto shrugged. Truthfully, he'd rather have red hair as well, instead of the color he inherited from the man who had stuffed the Kyuubi in him. But life rarely offered the luxury of choice. He idly wondered whether his father had faced the same lack of alternatives. But she's precious to Chi, so I wanted to give her this chance. I think Yuya-san can be a good person. But I think she will have a hard time in Konoha at first, Hinata hesitated. Anko never got accepted, due to being Orochimaru's former student, so I think Yuya won't be given much of a chance either. Godime-sama will come through for her. And we will too, Hiba boasted. If she remains sane, that is. I've got enough insane women around me as it is. Naruto looked at Karen, Kurenai, and Hinata, who were all glaring at Hiba. Not a smart move, buddy. They're all asleep, Rado questioned. Kurenai frowned, but nodded. One of the clones which Naruto left to hold watch while he slept also joined in. What is wrong? She wondered why he signaled for her to wait and meet the two of them. We had stalkers, the Naruto clone grumbled. 4 of them. I couldn't sense them, but they tripped one of the seals I left as a precaution. Hinata-chan saw them too, but I didn't want her or Karen Nichan to worry about it, so I acted like nothing was wrong. Konoha nin. I think so, Rado mumbled. Their tracks were extremely difficult to find, but they led from the village. When Naruto notified me, I tried to figure out who it was, but they somehow must have caught wind of it. You guys usually call me paranoid, but I swear I've been stalked for a longer time now, the clone stated sourly. I hate it, but somehow they managed to hide from me. But, you can sense their intent, right? Kurenai blinked. How can they hide from that? I'd really want to know that too. Naruto looked at her. Perhaps I should start hunting them when we get back in Konoha. He suspected that they'd be Hyuga, as some of the more emotionless bastards of the main house were quite hard to sense, but Naruto didn't like the scenario at all. He would rather keep the focus of their wrath on him, instead of them trying to attack Hinata, of course, but he'd rather not endanger the fragile trust Hiashi still held in him. The Hyuga were powerful allies, and would be equally annoying opponents. Given that he wanted to reinstate the Uzumaki as a clan, Naruto rather avoided making enemies of their caliber. However, if they found a weakness in his sensory abilities, they might come to force his hand. They had traveled fast. Too fast, if one would ask Hinata. She enjoyed it that they were together, a bit like when they had traveled to the ruins of that Uzumaki temple. She enjoyed being free of all the worries, not being burdened by concerns for her clan, or constantly being reminded of the sorrow she felt after the loss of Shino and Choji, even if it was only for a time. Now the paths were diverging. Naruto and Rado were sprinting off, heading to Takeda Castle, while Team 8 had to fend for itself now. Without Naruto-kun, our team has lost a lot of power. Karen-chan still doubts herself, and Kiba-kun is a lot less boastful than usual. Doubts. We all seem to be filled with doubts. But after what happened, perhaps Jiraiya had felt this. Hinata couldn't tell, but she suspected that the Hokage had deliberately chosen them because he knew they doubted themselves, knew that they needed a boost to their morale. Why else would Jiraiya of the Sannin praise their abilities as a tracking team to such an extent? Why else would he praise them for their actions during their clandestine Sasuke retrieval mission? To compare our ability to track down the Oto Nin to that of experienced Chunin seems excessive. I wonder if we really deserve such praise, Hinata bit her lip. Still, their Hokage had selected them for this mission, entrusted them with searching for the whereabouts of an old friend of his. After all those words, Team 8 felt like they could not afford to fail. Perhaps Kiba-kun is right. Perhaps this Terasu is indeed a lecher like Jiraiya-sama, and finding him will simply be a matter of checking up on the nearest brothel, but why didn't Jiraiya-sama say what kind of person Terasu is? The secrecy surrounding Jiraiya's informant was a matter of concern to Kurenai too. But she doubted Jiraiya would send out a relatively inexperienced team if he was expecting serious troubles. The path that led through the mountains ended up with a nice view across the gorge. They would have to continue down the path, going left, as there wasn't a bridge spanning across the gorge. The castle itself resided on the other end. Steep cliffs on 3 sides, and the approachable side fortified by several walls, Takeda Castle was quite a sight to behold. It literally towered over the environment, seemingly impenetrable. Naruto couldn't feel too worried, though. While a castle like this might be enough to hold off any normal opponent, a shinobi was a different matter. Leaning against the willow that stood next to their vantage point, Naruto took a sip from his bottle. Climbing made a person thirsty. Does every Chiji have such a castle? He asked Rado. The northern region is different. Near the borders to Kumo and especially Iowa, there are a few defensive structures. Hino Kuni does not want any marauders to cross the border, Rado mumbled. That's why there are so many border patrol missions. To ensure that the inlands are secure enough to prosper, Naruto understood. Damn, it must suck for the minor nations. Stuck between the defenses of the large countries, I bet all the criminals amass in those regions, while the large countries also abuse their grounds for their skirmishes. That is their fate, Rado shrugged. It's far from good, but it is better than the border incidents immediately dissolving into war between the large nations. Unlike Mizu no Kuni, the main continent doesn't have a natural border zone in the form of the seas. Not that I think the current situation is good, but it is a necessary evil. Stupid wars, the young Uzumaki grumbled. He didn't like the way the world worked, at all. Using entire nations as a buffer zone, their inhabitants exposed to violence from both neighbors, it just didn't seem right to him. But that was a concern for later, he knew. Right now, he had to focus on the Chiji in his castle. How are your chakra supplies? Reasonable, Naruto admitted. Ji-san really did a great job at strengthening my seal. The Kyuubi isn't as annoying as he used to be, that's definitely a blessing. But you having less chakra at your disposal will also mean you'll tire sooner. Yes, Naruto sighed, although I don't notice it too much. But when I fought Sasuke, because I had less chakra than usual, using the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu didn't work out like normal. I mean, I still had more chakra than he had, but I've never been as efficient in using my chakra as Sasuke. He hated to admit it, but with the power of the cursed seal, Sasuke had become a serious threat. Then again, Sasuke had the advantage that his Sharingan spotted the seals Naruto used to usually take down his adversaries. Fighting someone who sees chakra like that gave him an annoying disadvantage. A shinobi always has to adapt his combat style to the circumstances. That is why we usually take the time in a fight to carefully examine the opponent's weaknesses, Rado lectured. You relied too much on the overwhelming power of the Kyuubi, which gave you a great advantage when using all that chakra for ninjutsu or fuinjutsu. But not every opponent is beaten quickly. Haste can lead to danger. And with less chakra at my disposal, my advantage lessened proportionally, Naruto admitted. I was worn out when that snake popped up. Don't think too much about that fight. You are still young, and need to improve a lot. Gaining experience will make you stronger. But, regardless of that, facing someone like Orochimaru will never be easy. He'd have killed most others, so count yourself lucky that you survived. Rado knew that it wouldn't be luck. The poison which Orochimaru had used was meant to take Naruto down, so that the boy could be taken as a prisoner. The snake sage, however, had not expected Jiraiya to intervene. It was nothing Ba-chan couldn't heal. Looking at the others, I'd say my injuries were the least worrisome. Naruto took another sip of water. In the distance, they could see the guards walking over the ramparts. The worst pain isn't physical injury, but seeing your friends and loved ones suffer and die. Rado was looking at the boy with his dark eyes. I remember the attack of the Kyuubi like it was yesterday. Namikaze Minato had always been my idol. I was so proud that he chose me to be part of his personal guard. The blood and tears I shed with my comrades, but the worst was not the battle, it was what followed after. It was the funerals, the knowledge that they're gone. I lost my teacher, my girlfriend, and many friends. Those wounds go deeper than any wound of the flesh. I guess that is why there are so many shinobi who are driven insane, Naruto grimaced. A war must be horrible enough to drive even the strongest to despair. Especially the strongest, Naruto. Never forget that the strongest shinobi always carry the greatest burdens, receive the most horrible missions, and end up seeing the worst sides of humanity. I guess that is why people say that emotions are dangerous for a shinobi. Yet a life without emotions is not worth calling a life either, Rado shrugged. Emotions aren't bad by default. It's just, controlling them is difficult. When you lose control, they can become a grave threat to anyone. Light and shadows. One cannot accept the light without acknowledging the shadows it casts. And still it is better than the nothingness of darkness. Naruto had pondered about his strange dreams quite often. If we lose our humanity, we would become worse than animals. We'd be monsters, like Orochimaru. The stronger the shinobi, the more dangerous the monster. That is why teamwork is so important. Keeping your sanity is difficult, but when you can share your burden with others, it can at least be made tolerable. Together you succeed where you'd individually fail. I know you don't like what the Yondaime did to you, Naruto, but regardless of it I will still aid you because of the oaths I swore to him. I hope I can aid you like he once aided me. Thanks, Rado. Jiraiya-sama, there's another message from the daimyo, Iruka said after knocking on the door. Come in. Jiraiya quickly read through the lines, and sighed. I'm glad I prepared Rado for this possible scenario. Jiraiya-sama. Iruka blinked, a bit surprised by his response. This whole job of acting as Jiraiya's secretary was taxing, but Iruka did learn a lot about how the village was run. But there were also quite a few things that passed Iruka's office that were above his pay grade, as he liked to call it. Messages like these were directly passed on to the Hokage. But Iruka did know that this wasn't the first letter from the daimyo this week. Something big was going on. Seems like Naruto will get a good test of what it entails to be a chunin, Jiraiya answered cryptically. Will he be alright? Teachers shouldn't play favorites. Naruto is a different case. Iruka scowled a bit, not liking that his boss made fun of him, especially not when he was worried about his former student. He was an orphan, all alone and hated for something he couldn't help. Even if he had his comrades at the Hyuga clan, how was I to ignore him and treat him like I did my other students? He needed a more personal approach, even if he didn't want it at the time. And he values you immensely for it, the older man smiled. Why else do you think he pushed me into accepting you for this job? He didn't just do it for your Hyuga sweetheart, but also for you. He wanted to repay you, because you were one of the few who treated him with kindness. But I wouldn't have hired you, if I didn't trust you were capable enough, Jiraiya added frankly. I just did what everyone should have done. Iruka felt a bit uncomfortable due to the praise. Naruto isn't the monster people said he was. And ever since the invasion, more and more are starting to see the truth. Still, I hope you didn't send him on a mission that is too harsh for him. I might have, but Rado is at his side, so don't worry about it. If you say so, Hokage-sama. How many times do I have to repeat myself, Iruka? Just call me Jiraiya. As you command, Hokage-sama. Zenshi-sama is ready to receive you, Shinobi-san. One of the guards opened the door to the main hall of the castle. Naruto looked up and saw Rado nod at him. Too bad. These chairs were quite comfortable. Perhaps the poison hadn't completely left my system after all, if a few days of travel could wear me down this much. The castle itself had turned out to be quite luxurious. While the walls were thick and high, the interior of the castle itself breathed a sort of wealth that seemed rather out of place after traveling through the region. Down in the gorge between the vantage point from which they had seen Takeda Castle first, and the castle itself, a small village was hidden. Mostly consisting of traders, a few brothels, bars, and gambling dens, the village was filled with the sort of civilians that knew that a contingent of soldiers could spend quite a few ryo. Although it was not enough to make the village look wealthy. Now that Naruto thought about it, none of the villages in the region had seemed to be very wealthy. Perhaps Rado was right, that people did not like settling too close to the borders. They were, after all, only a couple of hours away from the border to Unokuni, with the expanding influence of Otogakur creeping close as well. Welcome. A slender man in his early 30s stood up when Rado and Naruto entered. He was of average height and had small, circular eyes with dark pupils that seemed to be as sharp as the point of a senbon. He moved smoothly. Although he lacked the grace of a shinobi, it was obvious that this man did train. Most likely he trained with some of the samurai that stood in the meeting hall. I had not expected your arrival so soon already, Uzumaki-san. We came as soon as we could after receiving our mission, Zenshi-sama. Naruto bowed politely, although the somewhat cold and calculating smile from the Chiji disturbed him a little. This man seemed to be intelligent, not the sort of man who deserved to be stuck out here. While his task of leading the northern provinces seemed important, a Chiji had relatively little personal power. Commands issued by the administrators of the capital still had to be followed, after all. And I thank you for it, both of you, Zenshi spoke evenly. Although the task for which I requested for you is not a matter of that much urgency, I will be pleased once I know my fortress is secure. The actions from Otogakur created quite a few worries here in the north. It seems doubtful that Otogakur would attempt to openly seek conflict with Konoha, Rado couldn't help but remark. Their invasion failed, they turned their only ally into an enemy, and after their treachery it seems unlikely that any other nation would aid them. But it is not their reason I fear, Shinobi-san, it is their inability to reason. Zenshi shook his head slowly, his long black hair brushing over his white and green kimono. Orochimaru conducted a lot of strange experiments, I am afraid. Some resemble more the demons of lore than the men they have once been. It is regrettable that Sandaime-sama did not manage to kill him during the invasion. You seem well informed. Yes, Shinobi-san, I do make a habit of gathering trustworthy information. Information, after all, is power. For instance, there is the way that the newly appointed Godime managed to restore much of the diplomatic relations with Sunagaku. Zenshi smiled finely. I gathered that you and Gara-san have gotten quite friendly despite the impressive display during the Chunin exams, Uzumaki-san. Yes, I was there too. Watching the battle was an experience that changed my views on you shinobi quite a lot. For two children to wield such power, we simple civilians can barely fathom the burden it must impose. The average shinobi is just as oblivious to the weight of the burdens which Gaara and I carry, Naruto said darkly. The things Gaara had experienced always made his blood boil. Naruto hoped that the boy would have a better life in Suna now. But when they had said goodbye when Gaara and Temari returned to Suna, Naruto had felt torn. Sure, with the threat of Otogaku, which had openly snatched away the last Uchiha from Konoha, somehow bypassing every line of defense which should have been in place, Suna had every reason to want their strongest shinobi back in the village. But Naruto would rather have kept Gaara in Konoha. The sense of familiarity between the two, both seeing each other as the first person akin to themselves that they had ever met, had even become a matter of jokes. Kiba had suggested that Hinata had some serious competition in Gaara, for instance. He frowned, knowing he had to get his mind away from Gaara. His seal was strong now, so Gaara should be able to change his life in Suna now. But while Naruto knew Gaara was serious in his aim to make amends, he also doubted whether the people of Suna would give him a fair chance, but that was in Gaara's hands now. Jiraiya trusted that Suna would change their ways, and Naruto knew that the goofy sage was much wiser than him. He had to trust them, even more because right now he had a mission to focus on. But regarding the barriers, do you possess any information regarding the current layout of the seals? It would shorten this mission considerably. Smiling finely, knowing he struck a nerve with Naruto, Zenshi nodded. Yes, I will make sure the schematics will be ready first thing tomorrow morning. My steward Sakai will lead you to your chambers and will provide you with the breakfast of your desire. They bowed and followed after the elderly official, who was in charge of managing the entire household, from the cooks and gardeners to the administrative officials. The man had easily passed his 60s, obviously having climbed up the ladder through the years. If Naruto had to make a guess, he'd say the man had once worked in the kitchen. The many small scars that littered the man's hands seemed to point at that. Sakai-san, is it perhaps possible that Naruto and I share a larger room with two separate beds? Rado requested after the doors to Zenshi's hall had closed. He and Naruto chose to ignore the samurai. In their armor and with their helmets, they all looked identical. As you wish, Shinobi-san, the older man bowed his head slightly. Then we go to West Wing instead. I'm afraid the room will not be as good as the ones I had in mind at first. Your servant will be notified of your new rooms and bring you breakfast at 7. We're used to camping out in the wild, so we don't need much luxury, Naruto chuckled. Rado is on his guard. I suppose I can't blame him. That Zenshi guy tried to act nice, but he has a rather cold heart. I can't say that he feels like he intends to harm us, though. He doesn't have the power for that anyway. Nor do any of these samurai. Still, he knows who and what I am, and seems to be aware of the treatment most civilians gave me as well. Why would he do all that research on me? Or am I acting paranoid again? What is it? Forehead. I'm not really in the mood to bicker today. You look exhausted. Sakura frowned. What have you been doing, Ino? Training. Ino grunted. The blonde had literally trained herself until she couldn't stand straight, and was now sprawled out over the ground. Her long blonde hair was untied and dirty, and her skin pale from the mental and physical exhaustion. You know, if you train too hard, you'll only get weaker. I need to keep my thoughts on other things. I'll go crazy if I do nothing the entire day. Calm down. Sakura sat down. Ino wondered how the Pinkett had found her out here in this training ground, especially when she hadn't seen Sakura in several days. Something within her friend was broken, Ino had concluded. Ever since Sasuke had defected and Shino had died, Haruno Sakura had ceased being the Haruno Sakura that Ino had known for years. Her closest friend seemed distant, something which was quite unlike Sakura. Ino knew that they had their quarrels over the years, but they had always been open to each other, helping each other out whenever they could. Ino had been there when Sakura was bullied, she had been there when Sakura lost her mother and later her father, and yet this time. You're not the one who should be worrying about me. I should be the one worrying about you. I'm fine, Ino. You're not, Ino huffed. Don't try to hide it, Sakura, you suck at lying. You're hurt, so why don't you stop hiding it? Haven't we always talked about these things? The empty gaze of Sakura's green eyes startled Ino. What happened is irreversible, Ino. No matter what we say, my parents remain dead. Shino remains dead. Sasuke remains a traitor. If not for the mercy of that Odo trash, I would have died. But I'm not planning to let myself be torn apart any longer. I need to move on. Are you sure you can just move on like that? Lee told me that the only way to grow is to keep giving it your all, that hard work can overcome any hurdle. I always believed that Sasuke would notice me if I just tried hard enough, Ino, that he would change. I knew he had darkness within him, but I thought that love could change him, that I could save him. But, life isn't a fairy tale. Some hurdles cannot be defeated, no matter how hard someone works. So you are giving up? Ino frowned. Sakura's usage of past tense worried the Yamanaka. The Sakura I know never gives up. Perhaps because I'm not the same Sakura anymore. Sakura smiled faintly. She knew that Ino was one of the people whom she had to convince first, her closest friend. Ino knew the old Sakura better than anyone. If anyone was to notice that she had changed, it would be Ino. Therefore, Danzo had sent her out to earn the trust of the Yamanaka. If Ino was fooled, anyone would buy the change. After all, with the mental traumas which Sakura had suffered, changes in her personality would not be completely unexpected. A Yamanaka would be the first to acknowledge that. So she told the truth, even though she knew Ino would not understand the truth behind her words. Lies were always stronger when there was a speck of truth behind them. Still, Sakura felt a bit of worry, knowing full well that her former friend was an intelligent and perceptive person. Fortunately, Ino fell for it, too concerned about her to get suspicious. Sakura almost smiled when she saw the worry in the blonde's eyes. Hook, line, and sinker. Don't give up. Ino looked so worried that Sakura only had more trouble keeping her face straight. She filed this observation away for later, as it underscored that she needed more training to control her emotions. I don't. Tsunade-sama took over the hospital, and offers to teach those who are able and willing. I'm planning to become a medic, to get stronger. Yes, she'd grow stronger all right if not through Tsunade, then through Danzo, but Sakura was certain that she'd grow stronger. Then Sasuke-kun will acknowledge me. Wait, where did that thought come from? I want to get stronger for the sake of Root, don't I? Let's grow strong together, Ino rambled, not noticing how distracted Sakura had become. Those treasonous emotions were hard to eradicate, and why? Danzo-sama had subjugated her completely, his orders were absolute. So why would she still feel like this? Why was that Uchiha still special to her? What is your father training you for right now? Sakura realized that Ino was talking about being trained for a special project. Oh, clan stuff. You know, about using the Shintention no Jutsu properly, Ino explained. The way my jutsu backfired on me because of how screwed up that Odo guy's mind was a sign I need a lot more training. Dad says this mission is a perfect test for me. Mission. Sakura frowned. This could be useful information. It's a secret. Ino hesitated. Hokage-sama forbade my father and me to talk about it, so I can't. Sorry. And I thought you just said that we shouldn't hide things for each other. Sakura joked. Don't sweat it. Orders are orders. I don't want you to be a traitor to Konoha too. Right. We've had one traitor too many already, Ino smiled sadly. But Sakura was smart enough in her own right. Ino obviously had to explore someone's mind, and judging by the way she said it, it seemed to be someone similar to the Odo nin that had deflected her mind transfer jutsu. That Jiraiya had made Ino and Inoichi swear secrecy in this matter did not seem to be a coincidence either. Adding up the facts, Sakura concluded that Ino had to interrogate Tayuya, the kunoichi from Odogakure that had been captured and held at the Uzumaki compound. The more worrisome fact, however, was that the girl wasn't handed over to the T&I department. The Uzumaki and the Godime hid the girl. How much did they know? Sakura mentally noted that she had to warn Danzo-sama as soon as she could. But first she had to convince Ino. Let's get something to eat. You look like you're starving. Sakura gave her friend the most convincing smile she could muster, partly because she was truly happy. Danzo-sama would be pleased that she obtained this information. Never did she hear the angry shouts from inner Sakura, fruitlessly attempting to halt this madness. Are you sure this boy is the key? He is, honey, trust me, Zenshi smirked. Zenshi-sama, your guests have arrived. Sakai bowed after having knocked and entered the dining room. Welcome, Uzumaki-san, Namiyashi-san. Zenshi smiled and offered them a place on the dinner table. This is my wife, Eiko-chan. He gestured to the woman sitting on the other end of the table. She was fairly thin, with her long brown hair tied into a complex braid. Her white kimono bore the symbols of the house of the daimyo and Hi-no-kuni. Her face was narrow. Naruto would almost joke that someone tried to flatten her head, but realized that it would be extremely rude to say. Still, with that small nose and narrow face, she reminded him a bit of a weasel. The weasel-like woman bowed to them, after they had bowed first. I understand you have inspected the barrier today, Uzumaki-san. I have, Eiko-sama. Naruto nodded. The schematic seems to be fairly accurate. The seals at the steep end of the mountain are especially well chosen. A bit old, perhaps, but they still function well. We had seals on the mountainside. The noblewoman frowned slightly. Shinobi could run up to the walls, using chakra to stick their feet to any object, Rado clarified. However, those seals prevent a shinobi from latching onto the stone, and thereby inhibiting their ability to walk up the steep sides which protect the castle. The same seals have been used for the walls themselves, Naruto noted. That way, shinobi face the same sort of difficulties as ordinary soldiers when it comes to passing obstacles. Fascinating, Eiko smiled. It pleases me to know that our castle cannot be entered that easily. It is why I requested the assistance of Uzumaki-san, Eiko-chan. Zenshi laughed gently. His prowess in Fuinjutsu impressed me during the Chunin exams. And the Uzumaki clan has always been known as the foremost Fuinjutsu experts. It is sad how your clan suffered an untimely demise, Uzumaki-san. Please excuse my husband, Eiko laughed. He always reads too much, and when it is a happy occasion like today's dinner, he brings up such gloomy stories. I don't mind, Eiko-sama. I'm happy to know that the legacy of my clan still lives on, Naruto smiled, seemingly carefree. Inwardly, though, he wondered why these people were trying to appease him like this. First the Chiji had made remarks on his status as Jinchuriki, and now they were praising his clan. While Naruto could let it pass as a common courtesy, Rado had warned him not to trust these people too much. Nobles rarely said things without some hidden reason, and having grown up amidst the intrigue of the capital, a smart man like Zenshi would know this better than anyone. I, for one, am happy knowing that someone of your stature is working on securing our home. After all, Hi-no-kuni seems to be taking the safety of the nation for granted these days, Eiko remarked. Eiko-chan, you accuse me of bringing up historic facts, yet you talk about politics. Zenshi joked. But to Rado, the exchange of words felt rather forced. It was as if their hosts had prepared this conversation for them. Unfortunately, Naruto did not seem to notice this. Why would the daimyo take the safety of the northern region for granted? Well, the recent invasion weakened Konogakure a bit, Zenshi answered, just a fraction of a second too early, confirming Rado's suspicions. The man was smart, yet a bit too eager. The unprovoked attack from Sunagakure and Otogakure caused quite a bit of damage. The loss of men and material cannot be recovered instantly, but our noble daimyo could have done more to stimulate the nation's strongest asset. A daimyo should invest in the safety of his realm, rather than being so economical regarding the matter. I trust that Godime-sama will ensure our losses will soon be restored, Naruto said formally. This was also a mistake, in Rado's opinion. These people were seeking Naruto's support it seemed, perhaps because Zenshi wished to make a claim for the position of daimyo. If this Zenshi saw Naruto fight against Gaara, he must have realized that Naruto will become someone of vital importance to Hi-no-kuni if his power keeps growing at this rate. This is dangerous. While I know Naruto is loyal to Jiraiya-sama, I doubt he will feel much for the daimyo. Naruto hates the inequality in this world, and the daimyo and the royal house are living proof of that inequality. If Zenshi exploits that, and turns Naruto against the current daimyo with promises of being a better leader, did Jiraiya-sama make a mistake by sending Naruto on this mission? He may be promoted to Chunin, but is he ready for these matters? Rado fell silent, focusing on his food, listening to the idle conversation between Naruto, Zenshi, and Eiko. It seemed like the nobles had spoken the words they had prepared, and were now just going with the flow. I need to warn Naruto. These people are dangerous. If they have the audacity to try to win him over for their goals, there is no saying how many other ploys they have prepared. Complimenting Eiko, as the hostess, on the quality of the meal he was eating, Naruto laughed and talked merrily. Observing his 13 years, the Chiji and his wife had made the mistake of underestimating him. His heavenly blue eyes turned to Rado, and the cold stare was enough of a message to the Tokubetsu Jonin. Growing up amidst the Hyuga clan had ensured that Naruto had enough knowledge about political machinations. Besides, it was not as if they could hide their greed from him. It was a black stain in their heart. While it was not exactly malice or murderous intent, in terms of having the intent to inflict pain upon others, it was most definitely a negative emotion. It was much easier to have these people underestimate him, as they clearly were no Hyuga and could not see through his expressions. Fooling them was easier than the guarded silence with which Rado surrounded himself, him being someone who specialized as an assassin in staying in the shadows, who would only stand out more and make himself more suspicious to them. After all, Jiraiya had pointed out to Naruto that causing problems with the daimyo and his family was a matter which they should avoid at all costs. If these two were foolish enough to start trouble, well, in a conflict with nobility, the truth about the situation was of lesser importance. It would be obvious who would get the blame if things turned sour. 3 days. For 3 days they had wandered around, not having the faintest clue as to where to find their target. Hinata felt uncharacteristically annoyed by the situation. The Hokage had personally chosen Team 8 for this mission, and for all these days they hadn't found a single clue. There was an empty house in the village, yet no one could, nor wanted to, tell them who lived there. There were at least 4 who had lied, Hinata had seen, but what could they do? Kurenai had stated that using genjutsu on civilians in order to get the truth out of them was unacceptable within the current mission perimeters. So they searched on. Hiba and Akamaru had spent several hours yesterday tracking down a scent, but it had been a dead end. Karen couldn't sense a thing either. There were a few faint signals of chakra in the vicinity, but nothing noteworthy. Some samurai who were guarding the regional capital, some shinobi in the distance that had border patrol missions, but other than that, nothing. Kurenai-sensei, who is this Terasu? Hiba asks again. A contact of Jiraiya-sama, a retired shinobi, Kurenai recited from what she memorized from the files. A man in his early 40s with reddish-brown hair, over 6 feet tall with a broad face and broad shoulders. He is known to have quite a few scars, presumably from being hit by shrapnel during an explosion. The file also indicated that he had a prosthetic left leg, although he knows how to hide it very well. That is all we know. And no one knows such a person, Karen sighed. This mission sucks. It's like seeking a needle in a haystack, while the haystack denies that it ever contained a needle. Have we searched in all surrounding villages? Hinata frowned, looking at the dejected Uzumaki. We still haven't visited Takeda Castle, perhaps they know more. After all, the local officials are all housed there. We knew this mission would not be obvious. Tracking someone down is never that obvious. Any contact of Godaime-sama is bound to have lived low-key, Kurenai agreed. We can try, but I doubt someone like Terasu would like to be known by the authorities. There are always risks when living as an informant in one of the biggest spy networks in the elemental nations. And the fact that the files said nothing about the man's past other than being a retired shinobi also seems to point out that this man stays hidden. Why does that matter, sensei? Hiba wondered. I mean, there are many people who got incapacitated and retired as shinobi, so why is this man different? A former shinobi from Konoha would still have a record, Kurenai clarified. Karen and Hinata realized the problem, but Kiba just looked at his teacher while not having a clue. It means this Terasu is likely someone from another hidden village, Kiba. A missing nin, perhaps, or someone who is believed to have died. In fact, Terasu is most likely not even his true name. Oh, Kiba blinked owlishly. Finding someone who tries to remain hidden from the world seems like an impossible mission, Karen grumbled. This mission only gets worse. But Hokage-sama gave us this information and told us that we should be capable of finding Terasu, Hinata disagreed. We must be forgetting something. Or perhaps we should try a different approach at inquiring with the civilian of the village where Terasu was said to have lived. We tried multiple approaches, disguises, and even offered incentives, but no one would talk. The people seemed to be afraid of something, Kurenai frowned. But there are no known groups of bandits or missing nin that raid this region. According to our information, this region is quite safe, for a border region at least. Hinata suddenly realized the other option which was left open. Could it be the local authorities? Hinata. Kurenai blinked, but when she saw Hinata's expression she realized what she pointed out. That the civilians fear the Chiji and his law enforcers. It could be an option, but corruption on this level would be dangerous. This man is related to the daimyo by blood, we cannot easily act against him or his soldiers. Unless we find solid evidence, Karen shook her head. But our mission is to locate Terasu, right? Agreed. But infiltrating Takeda Castle goes way beyond a C-rank mission, Kurenai sighed. Let's head back to the inn. Kurenai knew she had to send a letter to Jiraiya first. Hinata was right, there was no indication that there were credible threats in this area that would cause Terasu to run while simultaneously forcing all the civilians to keep silent. This more or less eliminated the option that Terasu's cover had been blown. If the man had run, or if he had been snatched away while no one noticed, the civilians would not have felt the need to lie to anyone inquiring about him. Kurenai knew that between herself and her team, there wouldn't be anyone who had evaded their attention for this long. No, the only option that remained, the only party capable of threatening the civilians into silence, and making it seem like Terasu had never even been here, would be the local government officials. People would have talked when it was bandits or missing nin who threatened them, after Kurenai had revealed her shinobi status, especially when there were no signs of genjutsu. Even civilians knew that there were few opponents that a jonin would not be able to handle. Still, there was the risk that their suspicions would be wrong. And if they were, Zenshi would be offended if he found out that a squad of Konoha shinobi had been suspecting him of making someone disappear. The village aside, Kurenai had to consider the reputation of the Sarutobi clan too. I really do not like politics. A good night's rest changed a lot for the team, though. Kiba and Akamaru regained much of their enthusiasm, and Hinata and Karen seemed to be less agitated too. Kurenai had not slept very well, her mind calculating all the options the team had. Fortunately, Jiraiya had been quick to reply. Any investigation against a member of the daimyo's family is a matter that goes beyond the authority of a single jonin and her genin team. However, I tasked Team 8 with locating my source. Whether or not he is living at Takeda Castle is of no concern to Konoha. Nevertheless, this is a matter which requires a careful approach. Konoha cannot afford an open dispute with the daimyo, and the daimyo cannot afford to have any member of his family be openly prosecuted. As such, I have added the paperwork necessary to prove that Team 8 is sent to aid Uzumaki Naruto in his mission to reinforce the barriers of Takeda Castle. This should be sufficient to enter without raising suspicions. If need be, inform Namiyashi Rado of your suspicions, and handle accordingly. It was a letter that had filled Kurenai with doubt. Why had Jiraiya emphasized the dangers of an open dispute? Why would she have to discuss her team's mission with Rado, and handle accordingly? A jonin always encountered many unknowns while acting in the field, but this mission was becoming rather annoying. I really do not like politics. What are we going to do, sensei? Karen sighed contently, after finishing breakfast. Kurenai wondered whether every Uzumaki was blessed with an appetite like that. Although the stacks of empty bowls that Hinata made were rather impressive as well. Takeda Castle. We're going to join Naruto-kun. Yes, Hinata, you can sit at Naruto's side today, Kurenai smirked, knowing why the shy heiress was suddenly smiling so happily. Still, they were on a mission, so Kurenai looked around to make sure no one was listening in. We cannot openly act against the Chiji, so Godime-sama handed us the papers necessary to show that we were sent to aid Naruto. With your Byakugan, Kiba's nose, and Karen's sensory abilities, that should not raise much suspicion. That is the key word, Kiba, suspicion. Try to be as subtle as you can. Hey, why are you singling me out? Kiba protested to his sensei. Not that anyone listened to his indignant cries. Even Akamaru whined that Kiba had it coming. So we need to help Ni-san with the barriers. Karen frowned. But none of us even come close to his abilities at Fuinjutsu. We will help where we can, openly, while covertly continuing our search for Terasu-san. A grown woman and 3 young shinobi left the civilian village, a sight which most people would immediately recognize as a genin team with their Jonin sensei. But even from a distance he recognized the unique taste in clothing for which Yuhi Kurenai was known. And by the looks of the pup running alongside the boy, there was an Inuzuka too. The girl behind him was a Hyuga, an unmarked one if his eyes weren't playing tricks on him. The red-haired girl was an unknown, but he had heard rumors of an Uzumaki girl living in Konoha as of late. This was Konoha's Team 8. The former team of Uzumaki Naruto, he knew. These the ones. Yes, he sighed. His partner was overeager as usual. And no, I will handle them. Ah, I promise I won't hurt them. Knocking out a few genin isn't even fun, the tall man laughed. You can have the Jonin, she's more your type anyway. I never really like you genjutsu types. Shifty bastards. He couldn't help but smile a little. Thank you very much, Kisame. You know how I mean it. Itachi, the shark-like shinobi grunted. I'd rather have a decent fight than all those fancy smanchy illusions. And a good fight means that I at least get to unwrap Samahata. He patted the bandaged great sword that was hanging on his back. We are paid to capture the team that is snooping around, unharmed, Itachi warned. The Chiji specifically stated that we aren't getting any Ryo out of this if they are harmed. Although I must admit that I am curious to see how he is planning to make them forget about their mission, like he stated. Yeah, this mission is no fun at all. It is if you enjoy genjutsu, Itachi remarked dryly. Perhaps this Zenshi would give us more money if I wiped the memories of this team. Kakuzu would be overjoyed. That bastard and his money, Kisame grumbled. But let's get moving. I think they've already spotted us. They have indeed. That Uzumaki girl is quite perceptive. We could kidnap her, Kisame tried. Locating the Jinchuriki would be a lot easier if we had a trustworthy censor. Someone who was better at it than let us boy, at least. We stick to the mission. And don't let Zetsu hear you call him like that. You know how annoying he is when his whiter half starts rambling. Bonus. To live among the Uzumaki. Experiment with first-person point of view. It was odd. Very odd. I haven't woken up feeling like this, ever. Sleeping without that constantly nagging distrust and fear. Wondering if I would become the next person used for experiments. Or if I would be targeted due to my gender. Too many kunoichi who didn't turn out strong enough were used like that, for their offspring, and it utterly disgusted me. I never asked for this. I never wanted to be a girl. Hell, life as a guy would be much easier. Although I had heard many rumors that the slippery snake bastard was actually into boys. That was the life I knew. A horrid plane of existence, most likely created to make us suffer for sins we committed in past lives. And yet here I was. Waking up after a night where I was barely haunted by nightmares. The comforting warmth of the talkative feline who lay softly snoring next to me. Talking animals were no big surprise to a kick-ass shinobi like me, but this cat, she knew me. The past me. At first I didn't believe her at all, but she managed to show me my past. My father, my mother, my former self. A life where I was loved, where people cared for me. Before I was broken and rebuilt as Orochimaru's elite guard. Before I became a murderer, a thief, a liar. I turned around and opened my father's diary again. I had fallen asleep while reading it. The picture of my mother made me wonder if I would ever grow up to become as pretty as she was. Probably not. It would be safer if I didn't. Ugly women drew less unwanted attention. Once more I looked at my mother's smile, as she held her hands over her swollen belly. Me. So protective, so happy, so, how disappointed would she be if she learned how I turned out? Whether the cat hadn't been asleep or if I woke her up, I didn't know, but she jumped off the bed. It was a daily ritual by now. I didn't want her near me. I didn't want anyone near to touch me. Regardless of this new life I found myself unable to lower my guard. And yet she was next to me every morning, when I woke up. Always using the excuse that I was sleeping so restlessly. She was right about that, of course, even I had to admit that, but I wasn't willing to talk about my nightmares. I didn't trust any of them enough, those nightmares. The things which I had done, the things which I had seen, I was afraid they'd all reject me if they knew the liar and murderer who I truly was. I slipped on my clothes and left the bedroom I had gotten. The relatively small living quarters at the Uzumaki compound only had a few bedrooms. I had gotten the one which Chi had previously occupied. Originally because of the seals which had been in place to imprison the mischievous animal whenever necessary, but now I could just leave it freely. It was nothing special, but considering that I never really had a comfortable room to call my own, this was a huge improvement. Like everything was. The red-haired girl that was now a fellow clan member had also left her room. Uzumaki Karen, she was called. A bit loud, and an annoying obsession with dogs and her Inuzuka teammate, but up till now she had been unusually friendly to me. Although she had seemed a little disappointed when I had bluntly refused to call her my sister. The crazy girl seemed to crave a family. Just like that blonde pervert himself. He had the master bedroom at the end of the hall, the room with that amazing painting of the lost village of Uzushiogakure. Cunning bastard. Even if it was a misunderstanding, though I refused to accept that I was the one who misunderstood him, he could have said it differently. He was to blame. How was I to interpret it otherwise when he ordered me to take off my clothes? He was the asshole who captured me, so what was I to expect? Everyone knows what happens to kunoichi who get captured. They'll pry the information out of you, one way or the other. And those filthy male apes usually did it in a way they found the most enjoyable. Dumb brutes. Still, I had to admit that this blonde bastard means well. But that didn't mean he has to blush every time he looks at me. Not that he's foolish enough to try anything. Or expect anything. He liberated me, yes, but that doesn't mean I feel anything about him. He's a guy, so I'm not deluding myself. He must have ulterior motives. Although that doesn't fit with how he looks at that blue-haired Hyuga girl. The two of them twirling around each other by not knowing what to say made my stomach turn inside out at times. He obviously likes her, she obviously likes him, yet neither seemed to know how to deal with the situation. Like I said, sickeningly sweet. And I hate sweet stuff. It amused the cat and the girl who tried to be my sister, but for me it was appalling that two shinobi could act like that. Especially him. As a shinobi, Uzumaki Naruto was nothing less than monstrous. Not that I expected anything less from a Jinchuriki. Still, the way he had just shrugged off my genjutsu was terrifying. I was absolutely positive that no one could free themselves that easily. Even Orochimaru had praised me for my prowess in genjutsu. It was the thing that had kept me safe from all those hedonist bastards. Talking about chakra monsters, he was just being dragged in. Another early training session, by the looks of it, as he was carried in by none other than Jiraiya of the Sannin, the infamous Toad Sage and now Godime Hokage of Konohagakure, not to mention the greatest pervert in the existence of mankind. Even Anko was wary of him whenever she went to a hot spring, she once advised me. Anko, she was the most tolerable. A little sadistic, perhaps, but she wasn't evil. I liked that. As long as it wasn't aimed at me, that is. Those first days of imprisonment I had hated her more than anyone else, as she had been the one who kept feeding me poison. Only because the little blonde pervert had been poisoned or whatever. I didn't even know that a Jinchuriki could be poisoned, but if anyone could pull it off it would be that filthy snake. As such, the dining room was filled up. The silent Rado, the guy with that ugly ass scar on his face, was looking at me with the usual caution. He didn't seem to trust me as fully as the others did. Then again, Anko also always popped up at the strangest times. Perhaps she just was a better actor than Rado. Take a seat. Naruto smiled at me, his face still covered in dirt from training. Jiraiya apparently hadn't shown much mercy, judging by the way the boy held his arm. Quote. You know, you don't have to keep acting so grumpy, the only Hyuga of this unusual household spoke up. Hyuga Ako was originally assigned to look after Naruto, while he lived there. Originally her help had been a symbol of the formal ties between him and the Hyuga, although the situation had changed. At first, he'd live at the compound alone, but with Karen and me. Aside from that, Ako had big plans about moving in with some guy named Iruka. I had never seen that man, but I felt some pity, knowing how fierce this young woman could be. Regardless of how she seemed to be a joke as a shinobi, Ako was capable of instilling fear in anyone, including Jiraiya and Naruto. Fine, I huffed. I might know my past, but it didn't mean that I just changed myself completely. I was still me, a murderer. I wasn't like them. But I was hungry, so I sat down and ate until my growling stomach was silenced. Life in the Uzumaki household was weird. Which soon showed, as Anko and Ako started to fuss about who was the better older sister figure. They were strange. Naruto's involvement was even stranger. You're the responsible and overbearing older sister, Ako, and you're the insane older sister, Anko, was how he silenced them. Correct assessments, yet not what the discussion had been about, they claimed. I knew why. Anko was just childishly winding up the poor Hyuga, who was too serious for her own good. And she never stopped. And if she couldn't rile up the Hyuga, she'd find other people to pester. Even I soon found myself laughing at her escapades. For example, Anko had apparently dueled Tsunade over a bottle of sake once, and Naruto had quite the way of retelling that event. Jiraiya's dignity wasn't spared either, considering how he had been dragged there by the intoxicated Senju. Although Jiraiya soon countered with some of the things he knew about Naruto. Foolish, Naruto had far more dirt on the old man. Not even a Hokage was respected in this room, the man soon cried with big, and obviously fake, tears. Is this goof really supposed to have chased off Orochimaru? I can hardly believe it. Then again, the now cheerfully laughing blonde was the one who had killed Jirobo without blinking an eye. At least, that was what I heard. These people were just abnormal. The cat, she jumped on my lap just now, was the worst of all. Mischief incarnate. A purse. I frowned when she gave me something. Yeah, she said cheerfully. Although I bet the owner is going to arrive here soon anew. I nearly fell from my chair when the door flew open with a thunderous clap. While I'm still not sure why, I somehow managed to empty the purse and shove it across the table. Right at the person sitting in front of me. Senju Tsunade, who had apparently just left the local gambling den if the penetrating smell of alcohol was an indicator, saw Jiraiya and her purse. Is this normal? I asked cautiously. Sure. Bachan always treats Hokage like this, my brother reacted. Even if it was a blatant lie, I was officially an Uzumaki now. Which made us family, he said, even if it was all a lie. The logic eluded me, but I accepted it for what it was. No more Orochimaru. No more Kazu, with his sadistic hobby of inflicting pain on others. No more Kenta, and his remorseless hatred against all those with bloodline limits. No more Amor, and his raping pack of beasts. No more Kabuto, with his treacherous mug. Life among the Uzumaki wasn't so bad in comparison, I decided. Hell, when I later cashed in the lottery ticket, the only item in Tsunade's otherwise Rio-less purse, I even won a nice sum of money. Tsunade knew she had a ticket with the right numbers, but she blamed the wrong person again. Poor Jiraiya. But I just left them at it. To me, it seemed like Jiraiya didn't mind spending time with Tsunade, even if it was her attempting to maim him. Such was the luck of the poor Senju. For once she got a winning ticket, and then she got it taken from her. Did I mention that I was a thief? Don't tell anyone, though. I don't want them to know the real me. I think I'd rather stay here for a bit longer, if possible. Chapter 65. Confinement. The art of Fuinjutsu has long been hailed for its power and complexity. While exceedingly difficult to master, as well as tricky to use, the results were well worth the trouble. In contrast, a normal jutsu would be cast, after which it would expire. Some jutsu, such as certain genjutsu, could linger longer. A person could be caught in it, and for a duration determined by the chakra put into it, a person could be kept ensnared. Fuinjutsu had additional advantages. Fuinjutsu could be seen as a jutsu that was written out, rather than given shape through the hand seals which every shinobi had to learn. In the best cases, a seal would be written in a special ink based on components from trees and plants which were grown and fed with chakra. Much like the special paper used to determine a person's nature affinities, this ink was created for the sole purpose of conducting and storing chakra. Often, the seal master would even add his or her own blood to the ink, to improve the results even more as the material was optimized for that specific chakra signature. Naturally, there were a plethora of methods that could be used. From crudely inscribing seals by etching them into rocks, to the more advanced methods of chakra writing, an expert at fuinjutsu had many ways to create a seal. Naruto had even found hints, in his inherited library of Uzumaki scrolls and books, that some people could actually solidify their chakra to create seals. Solid chakra was something that the boy recognized would require intense training. However, he had no clue as to how to achieve such a thing, it being a feat of inhuman chakra control. Then again, there were rumors that some Uzumaki were known to use constructs of solid chakra, such as chains, in battle. Perhaps it was somehow a bloodline thing, Naruto couldn't tell. He never understood why some of the older scrolls spoke of untarnished chakra, which somehow was tied to Uzumaki blood. Fortunately, such a complex method had not been used for the defenses of Takeda Castle. Determining the methods used to create the seals which formed the cornerstones of the barriers had been Naruto's first priority. The best result when altering or strengthening seals was attained when using the exact same materials as for the original seal, after all. Naruto only had to look at the seal he held on his own stomach to know that Sarutobi Hiruzen had sacrificed what little he had left of his life to summon the Shinigami, the same being whose energy Namikaze Minato had used to fuel the original seal, the day Naruto had been born. Only its chakra could be used to safely alter or strengthen Naruto's seal. Of course, the seals at Takeda Castle were not that complex. They were written in ink, the high-quality sort of ink. Being a well-prepared man, Zenshi had bought quite a lot of supplies for Naruto, even though the ninja had brought many of his own as well. As Naruto figured he needed lots of supplies anyway, he didn't mention his own kit. He could use that Ryo for ramen too, a much better choice, so he used Zenshi's supplies first. With the schematics provided by the Chiji, understanding the way the sealing arrays worked wasn't difficult for Naruto. Locating each seal was only troublesome when it came to the mountainside, as he couldn't climb down slopes the usual way. There was no other option besides using ropes like any ordinary civilian would. The seals would simply use a shinobi's chakra against them in their attempts to climb. After locating the seals, it was a matter of figuring out the right components for the ink used to write the seals. Fortunately, whoever had originally created them had not used his or her blood, so Naruto was reasonably certain that his work would deliver good results. It's not that I have to do that much. Sure, over the years the ink has seen its share of wear and tear. Rain, wind, humidity, even when they were well covered with stone, the seals still weaken, Naruto mumbled absent-mindedly. But, it's still a relatively simple maintenance job. Any Jonin or Chunin with more than just the basic knowledge on fuinjutsu could have done this. Oh well, it pays well, so I shouldn't complain. He was currently working at the lowest walls, the first line of defense of the castle. Being built on top of a mountain, there was only one slope by which people could walk up to the castle. Any assailant that wasn't willing to climb the steep slopes on the other three sides would have to pass through three walls. Each was about 3 to 4 meters high, and with the elevation of the ground, each line of defense looked down upon the one before it. It was quite a smart system, as a minimal amount of defenders could easily ward off a large number of enemies. In the unlikely case that the walls were breached, the main building of the castle itself would not be easily entered either. Each wall had a unique set of barriers, to avoid the risk of the three walls sharing the same weakness, and the main building itself was surrounded by yet another barrier. Activating those barriers would cost some chakra, but the samurai had enough training in chakra control to do such a thing. Luckily, the chakra consumption of the seals was remarkably efficient, giving the defenders a huge advantage. Naruto had made several notes on this setup, giving him ideas as to how to improve his own security network within Konoha. Naruto-sama. Right. Naruto had forgotten his shadow. He did not know whether Zenshi distrusted him or if he had tried to please him, but the Chiji had assigned a maid to Naruto to help him in whatever way necessary, or so the man had said suggestively. Fuka. The young woman was named, and she was dutiful to the point that Naruto got annoyed by it. Rado had even joked that she loved his shadow, considering the way she stuck to it. It was not that Naruto really blamed the woman. She was just a civilian, after all, probably dragged from some nearby village or farm to serve in the castle. Slender and easily half a foot taller than him, the woman was quite pleasing to the eye. Although she was not very shapely, she had an attractive face, enclosed by slightly unruly, long, flowing, maroon-colored hair. Her blue eyes were striking, yet what made her stand out was the beauty mark under the left side of her lip, in his opinion, at least. She was a dutiful and seemingly soft and gentle soul. Naruto couldn't sense much negativity in her. Then again, she didn't seem to be a very complex person. He figured that she was just a poor and mostly uneducated civilian girl, whose greatest dream was making a living in a big city, escaping the farmlands. From what little she had told, Naruto had gathered that Fuka had been a girl raised by farmers in a nearby small village, but when her parents had gotten into trouble with paying their taxes, Fuka had started to work in the castle to pay off their debts. She didn't appear to be a slave or anything. As far as Naruto and Rado could determine, she was treated decently, and the men even kept a remarkable distance from her, despite her obvious beauty. For Zenchi, she was cheap labor, nothing more, nothing less. For her parents, there was one less mouth to feed, and a good way to get rid of their debts. Rado had mumbled something dark about there being worse ways for a woman like her to make fast money. What was oddest was the rather obvious way that the woman was devoted to Naruto. Her eyes had nearly literally popped out when she first saw him create a small army of clones. The only time when she had refused to believe him was when Naruto told her he usually created twice the number. Naruto couldn't really blame the girl for it, as even most experienced shinobi had trouble believing the way he used the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. What was weird, though he had quickly discarded the notion as nonsense, was that she seemed to be looking hungrily at him, if only for a fraction of a second. You were saying something, Naruto-sama. Do you need more ink? Or should I get you something to eat? The woman's blue eyes shyly avoided meeting his. I was kinda mumbling to myself, Naruto admitted sheepishly. But something to eat wouldn't hurt. As you wish, Naruto-sama. By the time she returned, he had fixed the minor weaknesses in the seal, and had already placed the keystone back into the wall. Anyone who didn't possess the schematics would go through a living hell when trying to locate the seals manually, unless they were Hyuga, of course. X-ray eyes were the ultimate cheat unless one knew how to properly conceal the seal from a dojutsu, of course. It was a trick that he had learned early in his fuinjutsu studies, as he grew up amidst an entire household of Hyuga. Aided by Haruki, he had made quite some progress in that aspect in the earlier stages of his sealing studies. Wiping the sweat off his face, Naruto stumbled for a moment when his clones dispelled. The feedback from the memories of the 23 clones working on the lower wall's seals was a bit nasty. It was especially bad from those who had been working on the mountainsides. Those seals really required a lot of concentration to work on. First wall ready, Naruto smiled at Fuka. I bet I can do the second wall today as well. Zenchi-sama will be overjoyed, she smiled innocently. I brought you the usual, Naruto-sama. Ramen. You're an angel. Naruto was overjoyed when he smelled the heavenly broth. It's not Ichiraku, but you're close. Closer than anyone I've ever met. Naruto-sama. Too bad you're working in this castle, you'd be able to give Ichiraku a run for his money, Naruto smiled. That's the best ramen booth in the world. Old man Tuki and Ayame Nichan could have used someone capable like you. See, can I come to Konoha? I mean. Her blue eyes went wide with surprise when she realized what she had just said. Zenchi-sama ordered me to serve you, Naruto-sama, so if you ordered me to go, that wouldn't be treason, would it? I would follow his orders, she seemed to reaffirm her own words. The way she nervously peeked around, watching to see if there were none of her master's samurai nearby, made Naruto wonder what was going through her mind. He and Rado had both noted that her devotion was rather unusual, but had found no traces of genjutsu cast on her. Nor did the woman indicate in any way that she was held in the castle against her will, although she did admit that she had been forced to take the job in order to pay off her parents' debt. Still, The way she interpreted Zenchi's orders as something absolute felt unhealthy to both Naruto and Rado. Moreover, Naruto didn't feel comfortable with the whole Naruto-sama thing. In a sense, he was glad Team 8 wasn't here. Kiba, and Karen likely as well, would definitely have teased him with this. Of course it wouldn't be treason. Naruto smiled gently at her, hiding the doubt he felt. You said you will soon pay off the last bits of the debt, didn't you? So why wouldn't you be able to seek another job after that? Later on, Naruto discussed Fuka's odd behavior with Rado, but neither could conceive why she was so quick to be afraid that she'd be seen as a traitor. Rado had talked with several of the samurai who guarded the castle. None of the 40-man strong unit was as skilled as a proper shinobi, but they did augment their offense and defense with a more rudimentary form of chakra control. With their armors strengthened, their blades sharpened, their muscles improved, and their reflexes accelerated, these warriors would be capable of facing lower-ranking shinobi. Regular genin would lose one-on-one, and with proper tactics these samurai would have a chance at taking down a chunin too. It was deemed enough to protect the Chiji, especially when taking the castle's defenses into account. Unfortunately, no one within the castle was talkative. Not that Rado was great at socializing, but even by his standards these samurai were a tough audience. The only thing they gave away was their absolute loyalty to the Chiji and his family. Rado had even cynically remarked that these men would fall on their own swords if Zenchi would order it. Naruto and Rado had access to the entire castle for the sake of their mission, but they quickly discovered one inconsistency. Looking at the schematics, Naruto had realized that one specific wall on the lower floor of the castle contained a barrier. Zenchi had laughed it off, saying that it was the old escape tunnel, which had collapsed 2 decades ago, but Rado had noticed that the Chiji visited the lower floor on several occasions. By now, Naruto had been working for 3 consecutive days. The maintenance on the barriers strengthening the 3 outer walls had been finished, and Naruto had uncovered and repaired most of the seals that guarded the main building as well. But for some reason beyond Naruto's explanation, he felt like something was off. Or better said, things were too right. Something fishy was going on, and he couldn't put his finger on it. His suspicions were rousing. Perhaps it was the messenger toad which had suddenly popped up an hour ago, informing Naruto that Kurenai and Team 8 would arrive soon to aid him in his mission. Perhaps it was Rado's declaration that he couldn't find anything on Zenchi, telling Naruto that if something was wrong with the Chiji they would have noticed it by now. But why had Rado been actively seeking for that? And why had he so abruptly decided to stop seeking? Rado had been apprehensive for days, so why would he now suddenly decide that Zenchi was trustworthy? Naruto didn't know why, but he left a gap in the barriers. One of the ceiling tags would respond to his chakra in a way that he could slip by. It was insurance. Who is this Terasu, and why did Hokage suggest that he might be in the castle? Why haven't Kurenai-sensei and the others shown up yet? Why is Rado acting so weird? Naruto-sama. Fuka touched the long green sleeve of his shirt. Are you all right? I was spacing off again, wasn't I? The woman merely giggled in response. Fuka, do you know someone by the name of Terasu? The giggle froze in her throat when Naruto asked that question. In fact, she completely froze up, her eyes wide with shock. I must serve Naruto-sama, she mumbled to herself. But I must obey Zenchi-sama as well. Which command has priority? Whose orders go first? Obey Zenchi-sama, or obey Zenchi-sama when he ordered me to obey Naruto-sama? I obey Zenchi-sama by doing what Naruto-sama asks of me, don't I? What? Naruto blinked, not understanding what the young woman was talking about. I take it you know Terasu. I am not allowed to know them. Them. She kept wiggling from her left foot to her right, remaining silent for so long that Naruto wondered whether he should ask her more questions or not. He was afraid she'd break, that she would remain silent if he pushed her too far. It was obvious she knew something, but her behavior was highly unusual. Was there something they had missed? Was she under some sort of genjutsu which couldn't be detected or broken following the usual ways? The maids bring food to the family. The family is kept on the lowest floor, in the good chamber. The first chamber. The wife. The children, Fuka stammered after she had seemingly fought an internal battle between her loyalty to Naruto and her loyalty to Zenshi. I cannot tell more. But my orders are to help Naruto-sama in whatever way I can. But did they use a jutsu against you? I read. Zenshi-sama gave me a scroll. When I read it I had no choice but to obey. I am expendable, have to say that I am a mouth too many for my parents, a way for them to get rid of their debts. I have to say I am not like my brothers, not strong. Not male. Not strong enough to work on the farm. Have to say, Zenshi-sama provides, Fuka follows, Zenshi-sama allows me, in return for silence. I am not silent, I am a traitor, I must, traitor, I will die, but I must follow orders. Must obey Naruto-sama. Calm down. Naruto grabbed Fuka by her shoulders. My God, did he get such a scroll too? Zenshi-sama didn't know how effective it would be, if it would work on Jonin-level shinobi. The test was, it worked. Zenshi-sama needs Naruto-sama, the woman cried now, but her resistance was broken. Whatever the scroll had done to her, there had been conflicting orders, forcing her to choose which command she had to obey. But her orders to obey Naruto had been the latest, so they should hold a higher priority too, she argued. She liked the green-clad Chunin more as well, with his adorable whiskers. She found it funny that a boy younger than her could act so much like a grown-up. The look in his eyes, the concern, had helped her to decide. Naruto-sama, I must obey you, answer to you. Why does Zenshi-sama need me? For what purpose? He realized that she couldn't talk unless he asked her a question. She had to obey him, but as long as his commands did not conflict with Zenshi's original orders, she had no room to make a choice for herself. The Godime is an expert with Fuinjutsu. Terasu-san said he cannot fool the Hokage, and that someone else is needed. Someone who knows the Hokage, someone who is even better at Fuinjutsu than Terasu-san, Fuka rambled on, nervously looking around. But none of the samurai were here right now, on the first floor of the castle. Where is this Terasu? The lowest floor, she mumbled. Be behind the fake wall. And his family is held here. Are they held hostage? She was not allowed to speak badly about her master, but Zenshi had never said she couldn't nod affirmatively. So she did. Can Terasu undo the influence of these scrolls? Whatever was used on you, it is not a regular genjutsu, so until Kurenai-sensei arrives here I have no idea of how to liberate you. Terasu-san made the scrolls. Terasu-san whispered he was sorry, he whispers to me when I bring food. But he never whispered if he can undo it. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Naruto grunted. A second Naruto appeared next to Fuka, startling the poor woman. Follow my clone. The clone is going to inspect the outer wall. When you two are past the gates, you'll go hide. What are you going to do, Naruto-sama? Fuka begged. Please don't leave me. I won't, Fuka, I won't, he promised, trying to calm her. My clone will be with you. I must pay a visit to this Terasu, and I fear what might happen to you if things spiral out of control. Naruto held no illusions regarding the noble any longer. Zenshi would definitely use the woman against him. She was assigned to him so that he would get attached to her, this likable and fragile young woman. When the moment was there, when Zenshi needed leverage on Naruto, Fuka would be held as a hostage. It was a deplorable tactic, but one for which shinobi were prepared, at least in theory. Naruto wasn't taking any risks, knowing full well that theory was often useless in the real world. After all, theory also stated that shinobi shouldn't let their emotions control them, that they were tools for their village. And yet Tazuna, for instance, had managed to go to Jonin into a mission which, according to theory, had to be ended before they had ever set foot in Nami no Kuni. That first mission outside the village had broken so many of the rules which theory dictated, yet it had been perhaps the best mission which Naruto had experienced. Liberating so many people was good, even though the massacre which had brought forth that conclusion had been less pleasant. Theory and experience aside, Naruto knew that he wasn't truly prepared for this mission. It worried Naruto that Reito was somehow ensnared in this scroll-based genjutsu. With his knowledge about Naruto's skills, Reito could pose a serious threat if he indeed had been compromised. Still, Naruto held the advantage in terms of stealth. It was a fact Naruto would have to rely on, considering how he did not have any illusions that he would be able to defeat the Tokubetsu Jonin in an open confrontation. Another advantage would be that as far as he could tell, Rato couldn't distinguish between the real Naruto and the clones. Only Kakashi had been capable of that, and Naruto suspected that that was due to his Sharingan. Still, Rato was far more dangerous than these samurai. The samurai of Tetsu no Kuni were renowned for forming an incredibly strong military, but these local samurai were as different from them as a genin was to a jonin. No, I need Fuka out of here. My judgment would be flawed if she were to be in danger. Her life has already been hard enough as it is. Naruto descended to the lowest floor. Now he knew why it wasn't called the basement, as there apparently were levels below. Using his stealth seal to cover his presence, none of the samurai or other servants noticed him, although it did confuse him a little to see them all terrified for some reason. Something put them on edge, but Naruto knew that there was no time to explore the reasons for that. The jutsu he used to conceal himself cost him a fair portion of chakra, and Naruto knew he had to be very careful. Zenshi wasn't the type of opponent he could just kill, as the possibility of a conflict with the daimyo would endanger Konoha. But if this Terasu is the one who made those scrolls, then he should know how to undo the jutsu as well. Naruto considered what the best way would be to get him and his family out of here. He had to admit the fake wall was hidden pretty well. If not for knowing where the seals would most likely be hidden, due to knowing the schematics of all the seals in the entire castle, Naruto suspected he'd have wasted several hours searching for a way past this barrier. Spiraling staircases were cut into the mountain, descending deeper and deeper. This hidden tunnel led to prisons, the dungeons of this castle. Figures, people like that Zenshi always have their dirty secrets to hide, Naruto grumbled inwardly. Knocking out the guard at the first prison door was almost too easy. He couldn't be seen and made sure he wasn't hurt either, so the samurai hadn't stood a chance. Grabbing the key from the unconscious samurai, Naruto opened the solid wooden door, only to find a surprise. Who is there? A woman spoke up. The prison was decorated like a normal living room, far more luxurious than any prison Naruto had seen so far. But what had surprised him was the bosomy woman who stood there, in front of two young boys, while holding an infant in her arms. The woman could not see him, but she could see the samurai lying in front of the open door. She gasped when Naruto revealed himself and dragged the unconscious man inside. What do you want? Haven't you villains done enough? My husband. I'm not with Zenshi. Naruto cut off her protests. That shut her up, and made the two boys take a peek at him from behind her dress. The woman was blonde, and with her well-developed bosom she almost reminded Naruto of Tsunade, a civilian version of Tsunade, that is. You're the family of the elusive Terasu, I take it. Who are you? The woman hesitated. Why are you looking for my husband? She looked at his Hittite, and was visibly relieved when she saw that he wasn't from Iwagakure. Our Hokage, Jiraiya, sent a team to look for him, Naruto shrugged. Not that locating him is my job, but his involvement royally screws up my mission. He doesn't want to, that Zenshi forces him to. I know, Naruto didn't have time for this right now. What exactly is it that Terasu does? Fuinjutsu. Yes, my husband is a specialist at Fuinjutsu, the woman admitted. One of Iwa's best, sent to the front with orders to try to figure out how your Yondaime fought. After the battle, he was left for dead. We went to the battlefield, to take care of the wounded and to bury the dead. That's when I found him. After that day, I struggled to nurse him back to health as well as I could. When he was healthy again, Iwa was already convinced that he had died. And well, he wanted to be free, and we had fallen in love. So he hid himself, and you both lived as civilians, Naruto guessed. But at some point Ero Sennin found him. Ero Sennin. Ha! Jiraiya-sama will love that nickname, the woman smiled in spite of the situation. Yes, he found us, my husband struck a deal. Provide information, and in return Jiraiya-sama would ensure that his existence remained hidden. Until Zenshi found out. We don't know how, she sighed. We woke up one morning and there were samurai everywhere. We didn't have a chance, they took us prisoner and Zenshi forced my husband to create seals for him. Can he undo the damage he did? Naruto acts urgently. I know he didn't have much choice, but those genjutsu scrolls are quite a pain. And I have no clue as to how many people are affected by them. Terasu-kun would never do something like this without a failsafe, she stated more confidently than she actually felt. Zenshi had threatened him in the worst way possible, so perhaps, no, she didn't want to think about it. Besides, Naruto was probably the only shot she had at freeing her husband and her sons. She couldn't show any doubt or risk that their savior would back off. Wait here. I'll free him, and then I'll get all 5 of you out of this shitty castle. He looked at the samurai and shrugged. I'll leave a clone disguised as this poor wretch. That should be enough to fool anyone in case someone passes by right now. The plan was fairly simple, but Naruto knew he hadn't thought things through properly. How was he to get these people out of here without causing a political incident? It was rather frustrating. He couldn't leave this Terasu guy here, not after seeing how it could make Zenshi a nationwide threat. If I get my hands on one of those scrolls, would that be sufficient proof if things really spiral out of control? I am a Chunin now, and Zenshi compromised my Jonin guard. It is an act of violence against Konoha, so I am within my rights to defend myself and do whatever is necessary to free my fellow shinobi, right? Fuck it, let's just hope the daimyo agrees with me, so that I'm not ruining Konoha today. The next torch Naruto saw in the dark hallway lit the door of the next prison. He couldn't see the end of the spiraling staircase, making him wonder how deep this path went. It was a repetition of steps. The samurai went down. Naruto found the keys, opened the door, and dragged the poor sod in. This time he left a clone right away, realizing he had made a mistake previously by not immediately putting a clone outside. A broad-shouldered man was sitting behind a desk. Naruto could barely see him over the stacks of paper. His reddish-brown hair was unkempt, and the bags under his eyes showed his exhaustion. Still, the man looked reasonably fit. Being nearly 6 feet tall, the man towered over the young Uzumaki when he stood up. The awkward way by which he did that made Naruto notice that his left leg was missing, and that he was balancing on one leg. A prosthetic left leg, starting above the knee, stood next to the desk. The man had a broad face, and a very angry grimace. Me. Naruto blinked, taken aback by the reaction. He idly dodged the little jar of ink which the man threw at him. Quote. What the hell is going on? Naruto wondered, trying to stay calm. You're Terasu, right? For a moment, I thought you were him, the man spat. A Konoha Hittite, but the voice is different. You are different, but so similar. Let me guess, that bastard had a son. So much for that S-rank secret. Naruto frowned, curious that the man had seen it so easily. He considered wearing a hood or something like it, to conceal his hair. Or a different haircut. Things could get out of hand if Iwa realized who he was. I heard that you hail from Iwa, so it's probably safe to say that you don't like the Yondaime very much. That bastard was the one who left me for dead. I've never been much of a frontline shinobi, but I was sent because of my knowledge, my expertise in fuinjutsu. I never managed to figure out that bastard's jutsu, though. I lost my leg that day, and I would have lost my life if not for Isuzu. You do know that Jiraiya was that bastard's sensei. Naruto sighed wearily. We don't have time for this rubbish. I don't like my old man much either, but I got to deal with it. If you want to make an issue out of this, fine. I'll just tell your wife you were already dead. Just as ruthless, I see. Don't compare me to him, unless you wish to die right now, Naruto growled. I just want her and your kids out of this mess, and I can't afford to let Zenshi keep messing around with those weird scrolls of yours. You're a threat to the peace of this nation, so whether you live or die is a matter of lesser importance to me. Stopping this threat is my primary concern. Do you wish to cooperate or do you want to cling on to petty grudges? Choose. Hey, the man began to chuckle, which quickly erupted in outright laughter. A little brat like you'll become a fine shinobi if you're able to restrain that temper a bit more. You'll fit right into that bunch of bloodthirsty idiots. So you only tolerate Ero Sennin due to his views on peace, Naruto realized. I can't say that I disagree with him, but if I have to make a choice between one life or 1,000. Little old me has become that much of a threat. Terasu still chuckled. I guess I have, haven't I? Perhaps I was foolish when I thought I could peacefully do research on fuinjutsu. There will always be those who want to weaponize it. What Zenshi made you do doesn't matter, Naruto grunted. What matters is if you can undo it. I have reason to believe that the Tokubetsu Jonin that guards me was caught in one of your illusions too. I'd rather avoid fighting him, if that possibility exists. Some help you are, the prisoner remarked sarcastically. How did you intend to free me and my family? I said I'd rather avoid fighting him, I didn't say I couldn't beat him. I'm an Uzumaki, one of the last of my clan, and you should know what Fuinjutsu can do. The blonde smiled weakly when he saw Terasu's surprise. If possible, I'd like you to remove the influence of those scrolls, or at least give me a way to free Rado. The alternative would be that I'd have to kill Zenshi, and use your scrolls as evidence as to why a shinobi of Konoha murdered a relative of the. He fell silent. Naruto's eyes spurred open, and turned to the door. Kid, what's going on? Terasu wondered when he saw the boy pale. Fuck, that crazy son of a bitch, how on earth could he hire them? The pale Uzumaki muttered under his breath. Drawing a kunai was just a reflex, yet ultimately an utterly futile one. Idly he wondered why the clone that was guarding the door to the previous cell hadn't alerted him. Or, were they coming from the other direction? Good afternoon, Naruto-kun. The door opened, revealing a man with crimson eyes, dressed in a cloak covered with red clouds. He stood in the opening, staring right at Naruto. After meeting your team, I was hoping to encounter you. How fortunate that our employer also brought you here. Oi, Itachi, what is the hold up? A second voice resounded from the hall. Oh, the Jinchuriki. No, Kisame, you can't have him, Itachi sighed. Naruto was appalled by the overwhelming power which the large man radiated. It wasn't often that Naruto met someone with massive chakra reserves which easily equaled his. This man seemed to be close to Jiraiya and Tsunade in terms of power. Without a doubt, this shark-like man was an S-rank shinobi, just like Itachi himself. Why not? The shark-like man protested. He's a target, right? Besides, he looks like he'd put up more of a fight than those genin you made me capture. Though, that Hyuga girl didn't do badly. My arm is still numb. It is your fault for underestimating her. She is the heiress of her clan, so naturally she would have great skill for a genin her age, the Uchiha trader remarked. You don't need to worry though, he turned to Naruto. All four of them are unharmed, just as the Chiji paid us to ensure. We just put them in their cell. The next one down the corridor, to be precise. Why? Naruto growled. And why should I trust people like you when you say they're unharmed? You murdered your clan. You drove Sasuke to insanity. I'm feeling a bit ignored here, Kisame frowned. You sure I can't have him, Itachi? He looks like an honest brat, not like your usual self-righteous type of idiot. And that chakra he emits, Samahata is all twitchy. That kid must still be hiding a shitload of chakra. The Chiji didn't want any of the shinobi near Takeda harmed. Itachi seemed to contemplate what he should do. I know you want to take his measure, but do you trust me, Kisame? You know you're one of the few I actually respect, the tall man shrugged. What are you planning? I need to have a long and private talk with Naruto-kun, Itachi stared at the young Uzumaki. And that will require the use of the Mangekyo Sharingan. His eyes began to spin, and the pattern of his Sharingan changed. Tsukuyomi. Naruto felt the world around him twist and contort, a dizzying sensation in which he lost himself. He felt his hand burn and throb, but Itachi's Mangekyo Sharingan was too powerful. Everything turned dark, until even the voices of Terasu, who attempted to free Naruto from this genjutsu, and Kisame, who stopped the imprisoned seal master, faded away. This is unexpected. Itachi stood in the center of a large square. Very unexpected. The enclosed square seemed to be part of a temple of sorts, one unlike any Itachi had never seen before. This wasn't right. This wasn't even the dimension of his Tsukuyomi. There were clear skies, as if it was a summer morning, rather than the red moon he usually saw. Everything was wrong, especially his complete lack of control over the dimension. Is it possible that Tsukuyomi does not work properly because he is a Jinchuriki? I do not recall hearing of such a thing happening before. He felt something, a massive amount of chakra, below him. Leaping to a higher point, Itachi saw that this complex was built on top of a mountain. The temple-like building was little more than a walled-off plateau was built on top of it. The walls looked sturdy, as if it was a fortress, yet the building in the center seemed to disprove that idea. The temple, old and timeless as the bones of the earth, seemed built to endure time itself, but what purpose did the building serve? Not knowing what else to do, Itachi decided to go into the building. Whatever had gone wrong, he suspected that he should be able to find answers there. He had felt the Tsukuyomi succeed, latching onto Naruto's mind, so why wasn't he in control of this realm? Itachi had never met anyone quite like this. He had already been impressed by the power that the boy had at such a young age, that had even grown since the short time Itachi last saw him, but Itachi had never heard of anyone resisting the infallible Tsukuyomi quite like this. If it is because he is a Jinchuriki, I might have difficulties when Akatsuki begins to move, Itachi frowned, now inspecting the richly decorated building from inside. There were symbols of the Uzumaki clan and Uzushiogakure, and a mixture of familiar and unfamiliar symbols. He even saw the symbols of the Senju and Uchiha clans. With pillars made of marble, and the walls smooth aside from the inscriptions, this building did breathe a wealth which seemed to be unlike that of a hidden village. The hidden villages usually invested their resources in other things than decorations. Uzushiogakure was an unusual village, Itachi remembered. Holed up on the island, centuries older than any other hidden village, it rarely involved itself in any war, yet was always feared for its prowess. While all the clans wandered, the Uzumaki had been settled on their island for their whole recorded history. But how could this view be in Naruto's mind? Uzushiogakure was destroyed. Itachi knew from Kisame that Kurigakure had been involved in their demise, and Itachi held suspicions that their 7 famous blades might possibly be related to the art of those lost seal masters. There were a lot of speculations surrounding the Uzumaki, yet most information had been lost in time, which equated to the information being destroyed on purpose. Even Akatsuki held little knowledge regarding this lost clan. As Itachi explored the wondrous building, he reached the inner sanctum of the temple, where he found a hole so deep that it appeared as if it were a gate to the underworld itself. It was several meters in diameter, and so deep that Itachi couldn't see the bottom, but he did feel that the ominous chakra came from below. So, he walked down the steps that were chiseled out in the otherwise even wall. Spiraling down further and further, Itachi wondered how long he had been walking down, but at last he reached a door. The stairs went down further, but that was not where the chakra came from. He felt it from behind this massive stone door, a door which opened up with surprising ease. What is this? He frowned when he saw the tubes and cables that ran over the walls in this narrow corridor. There was a thin layer of water over the ground, and when Itachi got used to the darkness, he noticed that there were many doorways. This area was nothing like what he had seen before, lacking the unknown source of light, had it been spread from seals, as well as the smooth stone walls. This corridor was cruder, almost like a sewer. It contained 9 doors, if he counted them right. From one of them, he felt the horrible chakra which he suspected belonged to nothing else but the Kyuubi itself. Vast was the hall behind that door, the massive gate being the only thing standing between the Uchiha and the legendary creature. How unexpected, the kid brought me food. The gigantic fox chuckled darkly. And an Uchiha as well. He really knows how to cheer me up. Did you bring me here? Itachi remained looking calmer than he felt. The chakra that radiated from the Biju was unlike anything Itachi had expected. Foul, hateful, massive, it seemed as if there was no end to the creature's chakra reserves. They called Kisame a tailless Biju, but compared to the Kyuubi. Sickly Uchiha, the Kyuubi seemed more amused than angered. You were the one who massacred your accursed kin. He is the worst traitor Konoha has seen since Orochimaru and Uchiha Madara, Naruto revealed himself, entering the hall after Itachi had done so. Itachi hadn't seen or felt the boy anywhere, and yet there he was. Then again, he had been rather distracted by the presence of the Kyuubi, not paying as much attention to his surroundings as he should. Murderer of his kin, Uchiha Itachi. I cannot deny any of it, Itachi mumbled. Though, he was not truly a traitor, but that was not the sort of knowledge this child should have, was it? What did you do? How on earth did you get in here? There went that theory. Itachi had thought Naruto had somehow brought him here, or otherwise the Kyuubi, but neither seemed to know. I cast Tsukuyomi on you, as I wished to talk to you without worrying about who might listen in. Itachi never was sure how much loyalty Kisame had to the plans of Akatsuki. Trust between shinobi never went too far. And Zetsu was an annoyingly effective spy at the moments it didn't suit Itachi. While this path cost him a lot of his eyes and his body, it had to be done. It was the only secure path. You want to convince me to hand over this furry bastard? Naruto chuckled dryly. No can do. I am not planning to die. Nor am I willing to sell anyone to you and your little group of terrorists. I will never become the puppet of an Uchiha again, the fox growled. Even if it is an Uchiha killing Uchiha. Slightly annoyed by the way the Kyuubi praised him for something that haunted Itachi's every waking moment, the Uchiha killing Uchiha grimaced. My brother defected. He knew it would be pointless to argue about the night that he had prevented the coup. Itachi hated himself for it, but it had been the path with the least amount of casualties. If the Uchiha clan had not been stopped, the coup would have become a civil war, and the civil war would have attracted other nations, changing the conflict to a new shinobi world war. The short-sightedness of a few, even if their anger was justified at some level, would have caused the suffering and deaths of a great many. It was unacceptable. So, Itachi had burdened himself with the massacre of hundreds, in order to prevent the deaths of thousands, tens of thousands. Itachi knew what he had done, and defending himself for it wasn't something he was planning to do. He had tarnished his own soul for the sake of the village, as any shinobi should. Sometimes it required dark deeds to create a brighter world. His atonement would be a death at Sasuke's hands. With his death, the name and pride of the Uchiha clan could be restored, and his little brother could restore their clan. But instead, Sasuke decided that Orochimaru could make him more powerful than Konoha could. Naruto frowned. Mangekyo Sharingan or not, infamous butcher or not, Naruto didn't allow himself to be intimidated. Sure, Itachi was one of the most menacing people he'd ever met, but it did help that the Kyuubi was right next to them. It certainly put things in perspective. Compared to the fox, Itachi didn't seem all that threatening. Although Naruto saw Itachi as an extremely dangerous human being, far more dangerous than he was, Itachi was no Biju. Apparently, Sasuke is in a hurry to get strong enough to kill the guy who murdered everyone he ever cared about, Naruto continued. Orochimaru offered a shortcut, and in his haste Sasuke accepted. Well, there is the matter of the cursed seal too. In case you haven't heard this already, Sasuke suffered greatly. His traumatic experiences made him unstable. That seal only made things worse, but regardless of it there was already the fact that he couldn't handle what you did to him. Hatred grants us power, but it also drives my clan to do terrible things, Itachi admitted. You sound like you have a grudge against Sasuke. We first thought he was kidnapped, so my friends set out to rescue him. Little did we know that he willingly became a traitor, prepared to sell his body and soul in return for the power that Orochimaru promised to grant him. 2 of my classmates died that day, and I nearly lost my life as well. So you can bet that I hold a grudge against that Tem, and yet, at some level one can understand what drove him to make those horrible decisions. No matter how wrong, no matter whether Sasuke is responsible for what he did or not, you were the one who drove him to do it. I did not wish him to become a pawn of Orochimaru. No, it seems my foolish little brother still doesn't understand true strength, the elder Uchiha sighed wearily. Strength isn't granted. It is earned through the training and missions we do. Which raises the question, why are you so calm about this? Because I know Furball hates Uchiha more than he hates me, Naruto pointed. I wouldn't bet on that, the fox replied lazily. I am starting to like this one. Just because he killed his clan doesn't make him a good guy, the blonde shook his head. No, if he tried to take over my mind or whatever his jutsu is meant to accomplish, I am willing to bet that you're going to act. I might hold you as a prisoner, but even you know that I didn't have a choice in it, Kyuubi. You are deluding yourself if you think that the absence of choice makes someone better, Itachi raised an eyebrow. Besides, it is often because people refuse to consider options, that they deem themselves to have no choice. Which would imply you had a choice when you went against your clan. The Kyuubi remarked, slightly surprised. Then you made a wise choice, the mirth in the Biju's voice felt like the stab of a dagger to Itachi. Yet you don't feel as evil as one would expect from a person who'd willingly exterminate his family, Naruto frowned. You rather feel sad. Sasuke lost himself to rage, his hatred seething through him, blinding him, yet you seem overburdened by sorrow. Was the massacre truly a choice? Why did you make that choice? Decisions. Even if I had a choice, the alternative was worse. Tight-lipped, the Kyuubi remarked. Usually an Uchiha would start ranting by now, blinded by their power and supposed superiority, and so on. They were quite predictable as opponents. Until Madara came by, that is. I know that I am not like most of my kin, but I am not like my ancestor, I hope. Itachi showed a humorless tiny smile. The truth is often more of a burden than a lie. Dealing with my brother is something that is my responsibility. But I have to plan things properly. I did not account for him deciding to join Orochimaru. I expected him to grow strong under the wings of Konohagakure. If you wanted to kill Sasuke, you should have done so the night of the massacre, Naruto remarked. From what he told me, you made him experience every little detail about that night, yet you didn't kill him. If he wanted to kill, he would have done so, the Kyuubi added. It is obvious that he has different plans for that pest. My little brother was innocent at the time. I was unable to kill him, Itachi hesitated. Instead, I chose to become a traitor. Again, the alternative was worse. You will see that, as a shinobi, there are often cases in which there are no possibilities to do good, to protect everyone. Sometimes you have no other option but to walk down the path with the least amount of casualties. Where you must make a choice, who to sacrifice. Yet, through my actions I could at least rescue my little brother. Choice. The blonde narrowed his eyes until he started squinting. It was obviously a mission, you slow-witted meatbag, the Kyuubi growled annoyed. That in itself would imply that there was a rift between the Uchiha and the village. That wouldn't be all too surprising, considering what I did in my history with Madara. I take it that Konoha put the blame of me attacking the village on your clan. Yes. The rumors grew, that only an Uchiha would be able to manipulate the Kyuubi. That the attack from the Kyuubi had been too precise to be the work of a wild demon, the elder Uchiha agreed stoically. The story of Uchiha Madara has never been forgotten. The discrimination drove my clan away from the village, until it spiraled out of control. The Uchiha were one of the strongest clans of Konoha, Naruto frowned. If they would act, wait, they intended to do that, didn't they? You stopped a rebellion. That is why you don't feel as evil as you should. That is why sadness is your dominant negative emotion. The Kyuubi is right. You were actually doing a secret mission. The horrified Uzumaki exclaimed. That is an S-rank secret. Itachi spoke slowly and deliberately, hesitant even. The boy wasn't as slow-witted as the Kyuubi had implied, if he could see through the entire situation. The exposure of which would cause more problems than it would be worth. I would prefer it if the legacy of my clan remained untainted. Well, good luck with that, Naruto said disbelievingly. You are going down in history as one of the greatest traitors of all time, and Sasuke is well on his way of joining you on that same list. Orochimaru was supposed to stay away from Sasuke, Itachi said darkly. I spared his life when he attacked me, knowing full well that he was after my eyes. I even remained silent about the event, as I knew he would seek other ways to gain the Sharingan if he was to flee from Akatsuki. But I think that some people within Konoha were eager to see my brother gone. Many of those who once hated, envied, or feared the Uchiha are still in power. Danzo. Naruto nodded. We captured one of Orochimaru's minions. She might not be convincing enough proof to take down that old bastard, not for the council at least, but at least we know where the danger is coming from. And let me guess, he's also one of the people involved in the entire cover-up of the Uchiha massacre. Naruto only needed to see Itachi's grimace to know the truth. Hey, I don't suppose we can hire you Akatsuki guys to get rid of that old fart. You should stay far away from Akatsuki. Itachi had his face and voice in control again. While he had suspected it, learning that Danzo had cooperated with Orochimaru to get Sasuke out of the way was news that Itachi didn't particularly enjoy hearing. He had warned the man never to hurt Sasuke, or the consequences would be grave, but now he had gotten ill. Dealing with Danzo en route would likely mean that he couldn't die at Sasuke's hands, as he intended to do. Likewise, tracking down and engaging Orochimaru would also mean that he'd have to waste what little of his health was remaining. Sasuke deserved closure, to be freed from the hatred that surrounded his clan. Sasuke had to become a hero to the people, one which would cleanse the Uchiha name and give it a fresh start. That had been Itachi's dream. The clan that hadn't been willing to listen to reason would be redeemed through Sasuke, but that was all before Sasuke abandoned the village. Yeah, Akatsuki wants old furry, Naruto sighed. Which makes you an enemy of us both. And yet you do not intend to harm us. I think Danzo would form a more immediate threat to you than Akatsuki. Itachi gave a sly little smile. If he couldn't deal with Danzo, he might as well try other ways of getting rid of the man. Besides, he wouldn't be lying, just a convenient truth. Knowing him, he'll be coveting your power and your potential. Besides, due to Danzo and Orochimaru, my plan to redeem the Uchiha name has become difficult. And time is slowly starting to run out. I do not know whether I am able to meet my little brother before illness claims my life. I know that he sees me as his greatest enemy, but I am also aware of the animosity between you two. If I perish, he will likely seek you out next. And Naruto had waited when Itachi fell silent, but he wasn't that patient. I need a contingency plan, Itachi sighed wearily. I know you'd rather kill my brother, but what if I could give you a chance to change him from his dark path? What if you could stop him from his hatred? The Kyuubi scoffed loudly, and even Naruto had trouble with not replying sarcastically. You're kidding, right? How are you supposed to pull that off? In case you didn't hear me already, I offered him a chance to get back, even before I beat his ass. Attempting to impale me with his Chidori was his answer. The Mangekyo Sharingan is very powerful. And my friend gave me one which was hailed as the strongest since the foundation of Konoha. It is one which will change Sasuke for the better. Next time you meet him, was all that Itachi said before bursting out in a murder of crows. Taken aback, Naruto thought he was being attacked, but before he could step back, one of the crows charged into his open mouth. Needless to say, a whole, living crow didn't go down easily. Perhaps if Itachi had added some mayonnaise, but alas. Seeing how Itachi had left the mindscape, and Naruto had vanished after he had stopped choking on his crow, the Kyuubi turned its massive head. How long do you plan to hide yourself from the brat? A man stepped from the shadows. His long, red, gray-infested hair waved behind him as he walked towards the Kyuubi. His black clothing had long and wide sleeves, and his armor was gray. While aging, the man still seemed strong, honing both physical strength and experience at the same time. The Kyuubi knew that these were the nastiest of opponents, as they possessed both the power and the wit to survive until they grew old. Growing old wasn't something that many active shinobi did. Still, that was all just a facade. He seems to be adjusting to the expansion I made to his inner world, isn't he? The man spoke with a deep and calm voice. The reflection of how I remember Uzushiogakure. He needs to know his origins. And yet you didn't change this damn prison. The fox knew he sounded a bit petty, but the fact annoyed him a lot. I could not alter this, Kyuubi, only expand the part that wasn't defined yet. Uzumaki Ryota, how long are you going to pose as him? The fox's gigantic crimson eye narrowed. I know you are not him. You cannot be. So quit the charade. I am not who you think I am, Kyuubi. Much like the world I created for the boy, I am but a reflection too, the entity which had taken the shape of. Ryota chuckled. The other child was a surprise too. To see someone who carries the Totsuka no Tsurugi, the sacred creation inherited by the elder son, was not something I was expecting. Small wonder he managed to enter this place, even with the safeguards in place. The Uchiha boy isn't the only one who creates contingency plans, after all. Although, it would seem that that boy knows little about the Uzumaki clan. Bonus. The dangers of spoiling. It has been years since I saw this place. Hyuga Hitomi smiled fondly when the three of them walked over the little footbridge that arched over the pond in front of the Uzumaki compound. The building itself was latched to the mountain ridge, the same mountain from which the faces of the four Hokage were cut out, and where soon a fifth face would be added. Last time she had been here, there had only been 3 faces on that ridge, and the fourth was still alive. Yes, he had been there most of the times. Hitomi often wondered how Kushina and he had managed to hide their relationship, when their friends all knew very well what was going on. Likewise, Kushina's pregnancy had not been a complete and utter secret. At least, anyone who'd seen her binge ramen would have realized that she was indeed eating for two. But most of those who knew had assumed that her child had died with her. Few, very few, had been willing to even consider the possibility that Naruto, the little demon, was her child. You've been here when my mother lived here. Naruto blinked. We were about the same age, Hitomi chuckled. And I quickly realized who and what she was, so, yes, I'd like to think that we were friends. Not the closest friends ever, but still. She was a rather exhausting person. A bit like you, especially when it concerns ramen, she joked. Hinata had asked Naruto if her mother could see the Uzumaki grounds, which was no problem to him. Originally Hanabi was to come along too, but considering how Hiashi and Hitomi had strong suspicions that the girl was involved in torching down part of the Uchiha district, she had been grounded. Hiashi had not been willing to go to the Hokage with this, afraid to damage the reputation of the clan, but they had made sure that Hanabi didn't get away with it too easy. Okawa-san, was Naruto-kun's mother a Jinchuriki too? Hinata had her suspicions, but simply wanted to know more about Uzumaki Kushina. Yes, Hinata-chan, she was, Hitomi sighed. It was unfortunate, but true. She came here at a young age. She was already having difficulties fitting in, her being a foreigner, and then she got that burden on top of it. It was rather unfair. It was good that her boyfriend, and later husband, was there to help her through it all. Who? Oh, so you're planning to renovate the upper levels too? Hitomi didn't want to spill high-level secrets just like that, so switched over to another subject. I'm using clones to clear the top of the mountain. Ba-chan said that there once was a building up there too, but it was completely destroyed the night I was born. I think I'll just keep that area as a private training ground. There are a few storage rooms carved into the mountain as well, and we're currently clearing those out too. Anko-chan said she wants a room up there. I suppose that training ground 44 is rather lonely, Hitomi agreed. And from what I gathered she's not using her apartment in the village that often either. I suppose she'll be staying more at Rato's place, Naruto chuckled. Naruto-kun. Hinata protested, afraid that her mother would deem such talk inappropriate. Hitomi did seem surprised, but only because of the people involved, not because she was in any way offended by his statement. Anko and Rato was not a couple she would have expected, to say the least. What? You know that's what's going to happen, Naruto shrugged. It's pretty much inevitable now. They've been on a date and all, and you know how Anko is. She's showing more restraint than expected, Hinata agreed, reddening when she realized what she had just blurted out. It would seem your sensei is showing herself to be a good friend. Hitomi was amused by her daughter's antics. It is good that Mitarashi Anko finally found someone. She always seemed to be so sad. Sad. She hid it very well, Hitomi nodded. The three of them walked on, continuing idle talk until they reached the living quarters, where they found. What are you three doing now? Naruto groaned when he saw a cluster of arms, legs, red hair of various shades, blue-tinted black hair, and several snakes. And why are you strangling those snakes? She stole it. All three exclaimed at the same time. The two Hyuga didn't know what was going on, but the sight of the three entangled females was rather unusual was the word which Hitomi would use. She also noted that mini skirts were not suitable to wear in these sorts of wrestling matches. Stole what? The last page. Rolling his eyes, Naruto already knew what was going on. He glared at the perpetrator, who quickly scrammed. He was willing to give her a small head start, but the obnoxious little feline had brought it completely on herself. Of the thriller that all three of you were reading, I presume. Naruto pinched the bridge of his nose. And just why did you turn on each other, when it was so damn obvious who really did it? You know. Of course I do. Naruto frowned, before getting a bright idea. Of course I know that it was the gardener, because he had an affair with the lady herself, and the daimyo ordered him to be assassinated, which led to. No. Stop that, you fucking dimwit. Led to her poisoning the daimyo in revenge, Naruto continued with a shit-eating grin. And after the bastard died, she committed suicide, so she could be with the man she truly loved. You asshole, Yuya roared. Why did you spoil us? That's cruel, Ni-san, very cruel, Karen agreed, staring daggers at the now uncomfortable blonde. I think I found a new person to test my poisons on. Now, Anko, you should have known that she was the one who stole the pages, not I. Naruto began to sweat. You asked me if I knew, and I did. And we've got Hitomi-sama as guest, so you can't kill the host. It would be rude. Right. Please don't kill me. The snake mistress glared at him, and then turned to the two redheads. We'll get him after Hyuga-sama is gone. Let's roast that accursed cat first. She was their primary target for now. They rushed after the feline, leaving the three of them. I don't know why they never looked at Chi first. Everyone knows she's the only one who pranks people like that, Naruto sighed. I don't suppose I can sleep at my old place for a night. You dug your own grave. Hitomi smiled just a bit too sweetly. The ominous aura around her, in spite of her seemingly kind smile, terrified Naruto. And considering how I was reading the same novel, the Hyuga grounds would not be much safer for you. That's it for this part. If you enjoyed it, then like, share and subscribe for the next video, as it's going to be more interesting, and also check out my other playlists. Hope you would like them too.